Billy Bunter and the Blue Mauritius by Frank Richards. Performed by Martin Jarvis. Buck up, Bunter. Put it on, old fat man. Shan't. It sounded as if Billy Bunter was peeved. And in fact he was. Bunter was tired, and when William George Bunter was tired, peevishness was wont to supervene. 6 Greyfriars Juniors were tramping along the towpath by the Sark. Shadows were lengthening in the woods along the river. There was none too much time for Harry Wharton and Co. to reach Greyfriars if they were to arrive at the school in time for calling over. Nobody wanted to be late for roll and face Mr. Quelch's gimlet eye in his study afterwards. 5 fellows were prepared to put their best foot foremost. 1 was not. Billy Bunter generally modelled his pace upon that of the tortoise. Now he seemed to have modelled it upon that of a very old, very frail, and very tired tortoise. Bunter had already walked half a mile. Half a mile after a picnic up the river was enough for Bunter. It was yet another mile to Greyfriars by the towpath. It was no wonder that the fat owl of the remove was peeved. At a point where a leafy footpath led up through the woods from the river, he halted, and the urgings of the famous 5 passed him by like the idle wind which he regarded not. "We shall be late for roll if we hang about, Bunter," said Frank Nugent mildly. "Beast! Sure, what the thump did you come for if you're too jolly lazy to walk home?" snorted Johnny Bull. "Well, if that's what you call civil, Bull, asking a fellow to a picnic." "There's too much of the picnic inside, Bunter, for him to put on speed," said Bob Cherry thoughtfully. "What about upending him and rolling him home like a barrel?" "Beast!" "Look here, Bunter, step out," exclaimed Harry Wharton impatiently. "Do you want lines from Quelch, you fat chump?" Billy Bunter did not step out. He remained where he was and jerked a fat thumb up the woodland footpath. That shady path wound through Popper Court Woods, forbidden territory to all inhabitants of the county of Kent, outside Sir Hilton Popper's estate. "Lot of time if we take that short cut," said Bunter. "Out of bounds," said Nugent. "We don't want a row with old Popper," growled Johnny Bull. "Oh, blow old Popper," yapped Bunter. "Well, I suppose we might chance it," remarked Bob Cherry, glancing into the deep, dusky wood that bordered the towpath. Snort from Johnny Bull. "Oh, let's," he said. "Let's trespass in old Popper's woods and have him come yowling up to the school about it, and go up to the head and explain that we did it because Bunter was too jolly lazy to walk a mile." This was sarcasm. "Well, nobody's about," said Bunter. "Might run into one of old Popper's keepers," said Bob. "Oh, who's afraid of old Popper and his keepers? I jolly well ain't, if you fellows are." "You cheeky fat ass." "Look here, come on," said Johnny Bull. "We're not going trespassing." "I say, you fellows, what you want is a spot of pluck," said Bunter. "What?" roared the famous 5 with one voice. "Pluck," said Bunter. "I ain't afraid of a keeper. I'd knock him down as soon as look at him. Have a little pluck and chance it." The famous 5 of the Greyfriars Remove had in fact more than a little pluck, while that quality in William George Bunter could only have been discerned with the aid of a very powerful microscope. But Billy Bunter feared no foe when no foe was in the offing. At that moment Bunter was thinking chiefly of an ache in his little fat legs due to the extensive weight they had to carry. So, for the moment, Bunter was full of valour. "You fat, frowsy, cheeky paupers," said Bob Cherry. "Yah!" "We're not going out of bounds," said Harry Wharton. "Step out, Bunter." "I'm going to take the short cut," said Bunter obstinately. "Look here, you fat ass, you blithering, burbling barrel." "Oh, you can call a fellow names," said Bunter disdainfully, "but I'm going by the short cut, and you're too jolly funky. So yah!" And Bunter settled the disputed point by turning off the bank and rolling into the footpath through Popper Court Woods. Harry Wharton and Co. looked at one another. Their looks were expressive. To be called funks by the fat and fatuous owl was exasperating. To hang back, where Bunter ventured to lead, was quite intolerable. Bob Cherry stepped into the footpath after the fat owl. "Come on," he said. "Rot," growled Johnny Bull. "It means going up to the head if we're spotted. Let's get on and leave that fat ass to it." "That's sense," agreed Harry Wharton. But Bob was already marching on, and Wharton, Nugent, and Hurry Singh followed. Johnny, with his usual solid common sense, was undoubtedly right. But it was said of old that wisdom cries out in the streets and no man regards it. 4 members of the Co, at least, were not going to be outdone by Billy Bunter, and Johnny, finding himself in a minority of 1, grunted and followed on. The river was left behind, and 6 fellows threaded their way through the leafy wood, 5 of them with wary eyes open for keepers. "Hello, hello, hello!" It was not Bob Cherry's usual cheery roar. It was a whisper. It was a sound of rustling close at hand that caused Bob to halt with that hurried whisper. "Oh, crikey!" mumbled Billy Bunter. "Shut up, you blithering owl!" hissed Johnny Bull. "Beast!" Bunter, however, shut up. It dawned upon Bunter's fat brain that a burly keeper was not a trifle light as air to be lightly disregarded. The juniors came to a halt, listening. Someone was close at hand in the wood, a little ahead of them. It could hardly be anyone but one of Sir Hilton Popper's keepers. 5 fellows felt like kicking themselves. Still more, they felt like kicking Bunter. But it was no time for kicking Bunter. Silence was essential. No doubt it was true that there was a right of way through Popper Court Woods. Everyone believed so, excepting Sir Hilton Popper. But that did not alter the fact that Dr. Locke had placed the wood out of school bounds to avoid friction with a local landowner who was also a governor of the school. The rustling came nearer as the juniors stood listening. If the unseen man in the wood was heading for the path, he would emerge into it a little distance ahead of them, and in a matter of moments. But there was a good chance that he might pass on without seeing them, if they made no sound to draw attention. 5 fellows stood as still as mice. But 1 fellow did not. "I say, you fellows," breathed Bunter. "Quiet! But I say, let's bolt! He'll hear us, idiot! Quiet!" Billy Bunter's eyes and spectacles fixed on a spot a little distance up the path, and a glimpse of a form could be seen through the thickets. The man was emerging. That glimpse was enough for Bunter. The fat junior backed into the wood on the other side of the path and plunged away among the trees. A loud crackling and rustling accompanied his flight, echoing through the wood. "Oh, that funky fat ass!" breathed Bob Cherry. "Oh!" exclaimed Harry Wharton. "It's not a keeper." The man ahead emerged into the footpath. That he was not a keeper was evident at a glance. He was a small, slim man with a spotted tie, a pasty-complexioned face adorned by a variety of pimples, and a cigarette, unlighted, hanging in one corner of a loose mouth. Nobody, in fact, could have looked more unlike a gamekeeper, which was a tremendous relief to the Greyfriars juniors. He gave them a startled stare like an alarmed rabbit, and then backed quickly into the thickets from which he'd emerged. Bob Cherry chuckled. "Only a false alarm," he said. "That Johnny was more startled than we were. He's trespassing too." The juniors laughed. "But where's that fat idiot Bunter?" "Oh, the ass," said Harry. "He's gone." The juniors were reluctant to go on without Bunter, exasperating as the fat owl was. "Shall I give him a shout?" asked Bob. "Oh, do," said Johnny Bull sarcastically. "We want every keeper at Popper Court to gather round. Go it." "Well, we can't go after him and hunt him through the woods," said Bob, "and he jolly well won't come back as he thinks that pimply merchant was a keeper. So what?" "Push on," said Harry at last. "Bunter will wriggle out somewhere, I suppose, sooner or later." The famous 5 tramped on, putting on speed. 10 minutes later they were glad to emerge into a lane, leaving the forbidden precincts of Popper Court Woods behind them. They walked on to Greyfriars, minus Bunter. "Bunter will come rolling home in time for call-over," said Bob. But in that the cheery Bob was mistaken. When Gosling clanged the gate shut, Billy Bunter was still outside them, and when Mr. Quelch called the roll in hall, the fattest member of his form failed to answer "Adsum" to his name. The fat junior had run, stumbling and scrambling through tangled thickets, till his fat little legs could run no longer. But what had happened to the other fellows, Bunter didn't know, and, sad to relate, didn't care. His presence of mind had, he had no doubt, saved him from the keeper, and all he had to do now was to find his way out of the wood and get clear. That was only a matter of time if he did not run into a keeper, which, unfortunately, was exactly what Bunter did. Coming round the massive trunk of a big oak tree, he came suddenly in sight of a burly figure in gaiters not 10 feet away from him. The man saw Bunter at the same moment that Bunter saw him, and made a movement towards the fat junior of Greyfriars. "Oh, crikey!" Bunter backed hastily round the oak he had just circumnavigated. "Here, stop, you!" called out the keeper gruffly. "Beast!" groaned Bunter. Bunter would have fled, but there was not a run left in his little fat legs. In sheer desperation, he clutched at the gnarled trunk of the ancient oak and climbed. Billy Bunter was not much of a climber. It was not really easy to lift his avoirdupois. How he got into the branches of that oak he hardly knew, but he did get into them, clambering frantically. And he was 10 feet from the ground when the man in gaiters came tramping round the oak. He lay extended on a stout branch, holding on with both fat hands, breathless and palpitating. The man stood almost directly under Bunter, staring round him, angry and frowning. "Here, where are you?" he called out. Finally, he looked up and gave quite a start at the sight of a fat face and a large pair of spectacles just over his head. "Here, come down out of that tree!" "Beast!" Billy Bunter certainly had no intention of coming down. The keeper looked at his watch. That was a hopeful sign to Bunter. It looked as if the man had other business on hand and was not disposed to hang about. "Look here, you come down, you young scamp," said the keeper at last. "I know you belong to the school." "Oh, yes, Highcliffe," said Bunter astutely. "Highcliffe?" snorted the keeper. "You got a Greyfriars cap." "Beast!" "Are you coming down?" roared the keeper. "No, I ain't." The man glared up at him. "I tell you I've got no time to waste here. You come down out of that tree and done with it." If Billy Bunter had needed encouraging to stick where he was, that would have done it. He squatted tight. The man put his fingers to his lips and emitted a shrill whistle. A dog came scampering through the bushes. "Here, Tiger!" called out the keeper, and the dog came scampering up. He was a Yorkshire terrier, very lively, and Bunter noted without pleasure that he had a fine set of teeth. "Now then, young fellow, me lad, you coming down? If you don't, I'm leaving the dog to watch you and keep you safe till I come back." "Oh, crumbs!" "Now then, yes or no?" "No!" yelled Bunter. "Right, that does it. Watch him, Tiger." The keeper pointed to the fat junior on the branch, and Tiger barked, snapped his teeth, and pranced. With that, the keeper tramped away. The long minutes passed, and the shadows deepened and deepened in the wood. Bunter realized that it was past the time for calling over at Greyfriars. From the bottom of his fat heart he repented him that he had insisted upon taking that short cut through Popper Court woods. Tiger, tired of frisking around, sat down and kept a steady eye fixed on Bunter above. Gradually, as the shadows deepened into dark, Tiger became invisible, except for his eyes, steadily watching. "Oh, law!" groaned Bunter. He had missed lock-up at Greyfriars. He had missed calling over. Now it was time for prep, and he was missing prep. The hapless fat owl could only groan and wonder how it was going to end. That fat chump, that podgy piffler, that bloated burbler. Harry Wharton and Co. made those remarks in the remove passage, outside the doorway of number 7 study. They were perturbed and exasperated. It was after prep, and Bunter had not come in. "The howling ass," said Bob Cherry. "Could even Bunter lose himself in Popper Court Woods?" "Might after dark," said Nugent. "This means a row with Quelch," growled Johnny Bull. "If that fat ass doesn't blow him before dawn, we shall have to tell Quelch where we left him. We'll jolly well boot him when he does blow in." "The bootfulness will be terrific," said Hurry Jamset Ram Singh. "But I suppose nothing can have happened to him," said Harry Wharton. "Well, what could?" "Blessed if I know. He's ass enough for anything." "It will mean a row if we have to tell Quelch that we came back through Popper Court Woods," said the captain of the remove. "Lines all round, after getting through all right." "Well, we've asked for that," said Johnny Bull. "We let that fat idiot bamboozle us into going out of bounds. We shouldn't have." "Not much use thinking about that now," said Nugent. "It would have been of some use to think of it at the time. Didn't I tell you so?" 4 members of the Co. made no reply to that. Johnny Bull's common sense had been disregarded at the time. It was really not much use rubbing it in now that it was too late, but tact was not included among Johnny's many good and solid qualities. "I told you so," he went on, "and if we have to go up to Quelch, we've only got ourselves to thank." "Passed unanimously, and now give us a rest," said Bob Cherry. The famous 5 went down to the Rag, where most of the remove gathered after prep. But among the crowd of juniors, Billy Bunter did not appear. It was certain that if any Greyfriars man did not turn up at bedtime, there would be a spot of commotion. The famous 5 would have to state what they knew. That meant admitting that they had gone out of bounds. They heard 9 o'clock chime out from the clock tower, and still there was no Bunter. At 9:15, Wingate of the 6th looked into the Rag and glanced over the juniors there. Evidently, inquiry on the subject of the missing owl was beginning. "Any fellow here know where Bunter of the remove is?" called out the prefect. There was no reply. "Was any fellow here out of gates with him after class?" There was no help for it, and Harry Wharton replied, "Yes, Bunter was up the river with us, Wingate." "Oh, didn't he come back with you?" Only part of the way." "You'd better go and tell Quelch." 5 fellows, not in a happy mood, made their way to the remove master's study. They found Mr. Quelch frowning in his study, a pair of gimlet eyes fixed sharply on the chums of the remove as they presented themselves.
"Bunter is still absent, Wharton," said Mr. Quelch. "Do you know anything about it?"
"He was out of gates with us, sir, but came only a part of the way back with us," answered Harry.
"Indeed. Exactly where did you part company?"
asked Mr. Quelch. Again there was no help for it. "On the footpath in Popper Court Woods, sir." Mr. Quelch's face, already frowning, became very grim.
"Wharton, you're aware that Popper Court Woods are out of bounds for Greyfriars boys? You are head boy of my form, expected to set a good and not a bad example to other boys."
Harry Wharton crimsoned with discomfort. "Yes, sir."
"I should not have expected this of you, Wharton,"
snapped Mr. Quelch. Wharton made no answer to that. He could not explain to Quelch that the obstinate fat owl had taken the bit between his teeth, as it were, and that the others had followed where he led.
"Why did Bunter leave you?"
asked Mr. Quelch in the same snappish tone. "He fancied that a keeper was coming, and bolted into the wood, sir."
"Then he is doubtless lost in the wood,"
exclaimed Mr. Quelch angrily.
"Now this is very serious, Wharton. Each of you will take 300 lines. You may go now."
In silence, the hapless 5 left the study. 300 lines all round was their reward for having followed Bunter's lead. "The fat chump," breathed Bob Cherry. "We ought to have booted him instead of following his lead," hissed Nugent. "Well, I told you so at the time," said Johnny Bull. "Did you say, 'You told us so'?" asked Bob Cherry in a sulphurous voice. "Yes, I did, and yow!" 4 pairs of hands grasped Johnny Bull as if 4 fellows had been suddenly moved by the same spring, and banged his head on the passage wall. Crack! Yow! Roared Johnny. 4 fellows walked on. Johnny Bull followed, rubbing his head in indignant wrath. However, he did not mention again that he had told them so. Billy Bunter groaned. Only by a dismal groan was Bunter able to express his feelings. How long he had been parked in that oak tree, Bunter did not know. He hadn't the remotest idea of the time. Bunter had a watch, quite a massive affair, but it was useless to him for 2 good reasons. It did not go, and it was too dark to see the dial. It was a great relief when, at last, a sound of rustling in the wood announced that someone was coming. Then he heard the gruff voice of the keeper. "Tiger?" A cheery bark replied. Bunter could barely make out the burly form of the keeper in the deep gloom. "Getting tired of that tree?" asked the keeper sarcastically. "Think you better come down?" Bunter undoubtedly thought that he'd better come down. He was more than tired of the oak tree. But Tiger's bark was not reassuring. I say, keep that beastly dog off," he gasped. "Okay, kennel, Tiger," said the keeper, and Bunter, with immense relief, heard the terrier scamper away through the wood. The fat junior clambered down. It was really an easy climb down a thick, gnarled trunk, but it was like Bunter to miss his hold and roll down. "Ow! Ow!" howled Bunter. "Wow! Oh! Clumsy young idiot," said the keeper, doubtless by way of sympathy. A powerful hand on a fat shoulder jerked Bunter to his feet. "Now then, come on," grunted the keeper. "I've told the master there's a trespasser in the wood, and I've got to take you to him." Bunter had to come on with that sinewy hand on his fat shoulder. The keeper kept a grip on his shoulder, prepared for an attempt to dodge away in the dark. The fat owl stumbled along by his side till a distant gleam of lighted windows through the night showed that they were nearing Popper Court. Suddenly Bunter stumbled over and fell. His fat shoulder slipped from the keeper's hand, but the man bent over him at once. "Ow! Ow! Oh! I've sprained my ankle!" howled Bunter. "Ow! Oh! I can't get up! You'll have to carry me! Ow!" "My eye, I can see myself doing it," snorted the keeper. "You look as if you weigh 1/2 ton. Look here, get up with you." Oh dear, I can't. My ankle's sprained. Ow! It's like red-hot daggers. Wow! Rubbish. The keeper, grasping the fat shoulder hard, heaved. Bunter, at last, was heaved to his feet. "Hold on to my arm," growled the keeper. "Oh, corks, you young villain, you!" The keeper gave a roar of wrath as he was suddenly relieved of Bunter's weight, and the fat junior shot away in the dark. The sprained ankle, evidently, was a work of fiction. Seldom did Billy Bunter put on speed, but an arrow in its flight had nothing on the fat owl as he shot away into the wood. Then, with an angry snort, the keeper plunged into the dark wood after Bunter. Bunter could not see where he was going. Neither could the keeper see him. With his spectacles aslant on his fat little nose, Bunter charged desperately on, gurgling for breath, till suddenly, his feet catching in a sprawling root, he went over headlong. He would have scrambled up and carried on, but every ounce of breath was out of him now, and he lay in the hawthorns, quite spent. As soon as Bunter lay still, his guiding sound was lost, and the keeper came to a halt. "You young rascal, where are you?" "Oh, crikey," breathed Bunter. He realized that the keeper had lost the track. For a good many minutes he heard sounds from the keeper as the man tramped to and fro, hunting for him in the dark. But the sounds died away at last. The fat owl sat up. Bunter was feeling considerably cheered. All he had to do now was to walk out of the wood and trot on to Greyfriars. Certainly a spot of trouble there awaited a fellow who rolled in after every other fellow had gone to bed, but Bunter had his excuses ready. He'd lost his way in a wood, and Quelch could hardly come down heavily on a fellow who'd had such an awful experience, Bunter set out to walk out of the wood. He tramped on in what he supposed to be the direction of Greyfriars, till he suddenly came in sight of distant lighted windows, and realized that he was heading for Popper Court, the residence of Sir Hilton Popper. He blinked in dismay at those distant lights, and changed his direction, and the dark woods swallowed him up once more. And at length it dawned upon his fat brain that he couldn't find his way out of the wood in the dark. The yarn he'd intended to spin Mr. Quelch was, in fact, true. Bunter was lost in a wood, and he leaned on a tree and groaned. Then, too weary to make another effort, he slid down into a sitting position and leaned his back on the trunk. From somewhere in the far distance, a chime came through the night. It was midnight.
"Oh, law!"
mumbled Bunter, and his eyes closed behind his spectacles. How long Billy Bunter's little round eyes had been shut behind his big round spectacles, he did not know. Loud sounds of crashing in the underwoods and shouting voices startled him out of the slumber into which he'd fallen, and he sat bolt upright, blinking round him like a startled owl. Men with lanterns or flash lamps were running about. In the light of a lantern, Bunter caught sight of Sir Hilton Popper, but he saw that the baronet of Popper Court was not dressed with his usual meticulous care. The neck of a pyjama jacket showed over the collar of a half-buttoned coat, and he had a boot on one foot and a shoe on the other. Sir Hilton looked as if he'd been suddenly roused from bed and had thrown on the first garments that came to hand. He was brandishing a big stick as the light fell on him. Then the light passed, and Sir Hilton was lost in shadow again. But the fat owl heard his voice on its top note. "Did you see him, Jenkins, Joyce? Where is the rascal? He has the stamp! I tell you, he's stolen the stamp! Do not let him escape!"
"This way, sir,"
shouted a gruff voice, which Bunter recognized as that of the keeper whose acquaintance he'd recently made. Evidently they were searching for somebody. Somebody, according to Sir Hilton's words, had stolen a stamp, though why the baronet and his household should turn out in the middle of the night in such a state of excitement on account of a stamp was quite a mystery to Bunter. The chase passed quite close to him and thundered on into the wood.
"Oh, crikey!"
breathed Bunter. He stood up now, when suddenly a shadow loomed up in the dusky glade. Bunter's startled blink fell on a dim figure, that of a running man with a set, desperate face, running as if for his life directly towards the fat junior. Close behind the running man came the roar of the hunt. Bunter blinked at that desperate running figure, but he had only a glimpse of it, for the next moment the running man crashed fairly into him, and the fat owl, with a gasping yell, went spinning and rolled over. The running man, even more taken by surprise than Bunter by that sudden collision, sprawled headlong over him, winded to the wide.
"Oh!"
spluttered Bunter.
"This way!"
came a roar from Sir Hilton Popper.
"Quick! I see him! By gad, there are two of them! Quick! Seize him!"
The winded man, groaning for breath, struggled off Bunter. But before he could gain his feet, the hunters were on the spot. Lanterns and flash lamps concentrated on the man, hands grasped him on all sides, and as he feebly resisted, Sir Hilton Popper brandished the big stick over his head.
"Ow! Ow!"
Bunter sat up.
"I say, where's my specs?"
"Secure him!"
roared Sir Hilton Popper, heedless for the moment of Bunter.
"Rascal, attempt to resist and I will stun you."
"We got him, sir," said Jenkins. The wretched man seemed safe enough, with a burly keeper grasping either arm.
"Ow! Look out! Where's my specs?"
howled Bunter. Sir Hilton bestowed an angry and astonished glance on the fat owl.
Boy, stand up! Who are you? An accomplice of this burglar, eh?"
All the party, even the prisoner, were staring at the fat owl as he groped in the grass for his spectacles, knocked off in the collision. Recognition came into Jenkins' face.
"That's the boy I told you of, Sir Hilton, the young trespasser. Yeah,
"That young rascal!" exclaimed Sir Hilton. "What are you groping there for, you young scoundrel?"
"Oh, my specs! My specs!"
A glimmer of lantern light caught the lenses of the spectacles in the grass, and Bunter spotted them and grabbed them up. He jammed them on his fat little nose and blinked at Sir Hilton Popper. The long, lean baronet frowned down on him. "I've seen you before," he snapped. "You're a Greyfriars boy. Your name is Grunt, or Hunt. What's your name?"
"Oh, crikey! Bunter, sir,"
groaned the fat owl.
"That beast ran into me and knocked me over."
The prisoner in the grasp of the keepers gave him a glare. "You silly young hound," said the prisoner in concentrated tones. "I'd have got clear if you hadn't been in the way. Blow ya." "Silence, you," rapped Sir Hilton Popper. "Hold him, Jenkins, Joyce. He has the stamp. Hold him while I search him for the stamp." He proceeded to search the prisoner. There was a sudden exclamation from Sir Hilton Popper. It was almost a crow of relief and satisfaction. Something that he'd taken from the prisoner was in his brown palm. It looked to Bunter like a postage stamp, so far as he could see it. "This is it. Show the light here. Take that rascal away. He must be handed over to the police." He turned to the fat junior. "Bunter, you've been caught trespassing in my woods. What are you doing here, this time of night?"
I lost my way. I couldn't get out of the wood. Oh, law!"
gasped Bunter. From his height, nearly a couple of feet over Bunter's fat head, the Lord of Popper Court stared down at him. "Lost you, eh? Gad, the boy's a fool. An idiot. A nincompoop."
"Oh, really, sir?"
"However, you've been partly the means of catching this rogue who burgled my house, Stunter, Grunter, that is, Bunter. Follow me, and I shall send you back to Greyfriars." Billy Bunter rolled after the baronet as the party headed for Popper Court. His night out was over at last. It was a couple of hours after midnight, and the remove had been fast asleep when the door opened and Mr. Quelch came in with Billy Bunter.
"Lose no time, Bunter,"
said Mr. Quelch in a voice rather like the filing of a saw.
"Oh, yes, sir," mumbled Bunter. I say, sir, it's awfully late."
"I'm aware of that, Bunter."
"I mean, sir, may I stay in bed after rising bell?"
"You may not, Bunter,"
answered Mr. Quelch grimly. It was a relief to Harry Wharton and Co. to see the fat owl safe and sound. In a few minutes the light was switched off again, and the door closed on the remove master. Then 5 or 6 voices were heard at once. "Bunter, you fat ass! Where have you been all this time?"
"Yeah, I say, you fellows, did that keeper get you?"
said Bunter. "It wasn't a keeper, fathead, only some chap taking his pimples for a walk," said Bob Cherry.
"Oh, I thought it was a keeper. I say, you fellows, I got lost in the wood after dark."
"What the thump did you stay in the wood till dark for, you fathead?"
"Well, how could I help it when I was up a tree, and a beastly keeper sent his dog to watch me?" demanded Bunter.
"Oh, my hat!"
"After that, he came back, only I got away."
"Oh, knocked him down as soon as looked at him?" inquired Johnny Bull sarcastically.
"Exactly,"
said Bunter. "What?"
"Oh, fat lot, I care for keepers," said Bunter disdainfully. "He had hold of my shoulder, and I gave him a punch and hooked it. He didn't let go because he thought I'd sprained my ankle or anything. I just knocked him over and went."
"Ha, ha, 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 ha!"
"Oh, you can cackle," said Bunter warmly.
"Didn't Quelch whop you?" asked Herbert Vernon Smith, known as the Bounder.
"Oh, no jolly fear," said Bunter. "Quelch has let me off. You see, he practically had to, old Popper being a governor of the school and putting in a word for me."
"Popper did?" exclaimed a dozen fellows.
"Oh, yes, rather. He's a crusty old bean. Still, there is such a thing as gratitude, you know. And after I'd caught the burglar for him—"
"What burglar, you howling ass?"
"Oh, you see, there was a burglary at Popper Court. An awful ruffian broke into the place and pinched a stamp."
"Penny one?" asked Johnny Bull with a snort.
"Oh, I don't know whether it was a penny stamp or a tuppenny one, Bull. I know that old Popper was awfully grateful when I caught the burglar and he got it back. So, you caught the burglar, did you? Chuckled Vernon Smith. I jolly well did, declared Bunter. Yeah, I fell asleep under a tree.
Oh, that sounds true, remarked Peter Todd.
Oh, really, Toddy?
And when you've fallen asleep, you dreamed that you'd caught a burglar? Asked Skinner.
I jolly well did catched him. I was woken up by an awful row going on. Old Popper and 3 or 4 keepers and footmen with lanterns and things chasing after that burglar. And seeing him coming, I leapt at him.
Yeah, we can see you doing it, remarked Skinner.
Leaping at him like a tiger, I bore him to the earth and I shouted, this way, I've got him. Then they all came up and collared him. Mind, the burglar never fell over me in the dark or anything like that. Ha, 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 ha. And old Popper said, come along with me, my dear fellow. And they jolly well stood me some supper, too, and sent me home in the car. Oh, and old Popper sent a note to Quelch, too. Quelch looked like biting me when I came in, but after reading old Popper's note, he just said, I will take you to your dormitory, Bunter.
Well, it seems that the fat oyster is let off, growled Johnny Bull, and we've got 300 lines all round.
Eh? What you got lines for if you weren't copped?
Asked Bunter. We had to tell Quelch where we left you, you fat ass, when you didn't turn up for dorm, said Harry Wharton.
Oh, think that's funny, you fat chump?
Hooted Bob Cherry. Cachinated the fat owl.
I say, fancy you fellows telling Quelch and getting lines all round.
There was a creak of a bed.
Well, I'm going to sleep. I say, is that some fellow getting up?
Yes, came Johnny Bull's voice.
Oh, what are you getting up for?
I'm going to swipe you with my pillow.
Eh? What? No, now look here. Keep off, you beast. Wow, will you keep off?
Swipe. Swipe.
Ow! Wow! Will you stop it?
Shrieked Bunter. Swipe, swipe, swipe. Johnny Bull seemed to be putting his beef into it, and the fat owl wriggled and roared.
No, stop it! You-roo!
There, gasped Johnny. Think that's funny, too. Billy Bunter seemed no longer amused. Johnny Bull went back to bed, feeling better. Cecil Reginald Temple of the 4th Form stared. My only summer hat, said Temple. Fast asleep, said Fry in wonder. Oh, rather, said Dabney. The Sleeping Beauty, remarked Temple. A snore was an unusual sound to be heard in morning break. It was no wonder that it drew the attention of Temple, Dabney and Fry as they came across the landing from the 4th Form studies. They gazed at the plump figure of Billy Bunter, extended at ease on the settee on the study landing, his mouth open, his eyes shut behind his big spectacles, sleeping and snoring. I've heard that fat chap has nodded off in the form room in the afternoon, but in morning break, remarked Fry, it's the jolly old limit, said Temple. Unaware of the 3 4th Formers, Bunter slept and snored on. Might give him a shake, said Fry. Temple shook his head. I'm going to give him something else, he said. Cut off to the study, Dad, and get me the tube of sky blue from my colour box. What on earth for? Dabney asked. Bunter, answered Temple. Oh, my hat, said Dabney, and he chuckled and cut back to the study in the 4th Form passage. He returned in under a minute with the tube of colour. Cecil Reginald Temple took it and unscrewed the cap. Fry and Dabney watched him, grinning. He squeezed out sky-blue watercolour from the tube on Bunter's little fat nose. Bunter's nose generally inclined to red in hue, but as Temple spread the paint over it, it looked blue, blue as the summer sky. Fry and Dabney chuckled explosively as they gazed at a fat owl with a sky-blue nose. A thing of beauty is a joy forever, said Temple. Don't wake him, admonished Temple. I'm not finished yet. There seemed little danger of Bunter awakening. He did not stir as Temple drew 2 large blue circles round his eyes, giving him an extraordinary appearance of wearing an extra pair of spectacles twice as large as his own. A sky-blue moustache was imprinted over Bunter's capacious mouth. Temple squeezed the last remnant of colour from the tube in a daub on his plump chin. Then he stepped back to admire his handiwork. "Hello, there goes the bell. Time we travelled," drawled Temple, as the first clang was heard of the bell for third school. Temple, Dabney and Co. went down the stairs, chuckling. Billy Bunter was left alone on the study landing once more, still sleeping and snoring. Even the clang of the bell did not awaken Bunter. Indeed, the fat owl might have slept and snored on through third school, had not Trotter, the house page, chanced to cross the study landing on his lawful occasions. "Oh, corks!" gasped Trotter. He stood spellbound for a long moment. Why had Bunter done this? Trotter could not guess. Some sort of lark, he supposed. Trotter gave the fat owl a shake. Shake, shake. Trotter gave Bunter another shake, so energetic that it roused even the fat owl from his slumbers. Bunter's eyes opened drowsily behind his big spectacles. No, let me alone. No, 'tain't rising bell. Beast, mumbled Bunter. Then he realized that he was not in bed in the removed dormitory, and sat up. Oh, crumbs! I say, has the bell gone? 10 minutes ago, Master Bunter, answered Trotter. Oh, crikey! Bunter bounded up from the settee. I shall be late, and Quelch is pretty crusty with me already. Bunter rolled hurriedly towards the stairs. Now, hold on, sir, gasped Trotter. Hadn't you better get a wash first? Bunter stared round at him with an angry and indignant stare. What? He snapped. Bunter was accustomed to little jokes in the remove on the subject of washing. He did not want any little jokes on that subject from a house page. Wash, sir. Hadn't you better wash your face? You cheeky fathead, hooted Bunter. Mind your own business. Unaware of the unusual and extraordinary state of his fat visage, Bunter did not realize that Trotter was giving him good advice. He tore off to the remove form room. Quelch's brow was often severe. Now it was more severe than usual. He had sat up to a very late hour the previous night, on account of Bunter. Quelch could not keep such late hours without feeling the effects in the morning. And Quelch could not feel the effects in the morning without passing on some of the same to his form. Lord Mauleverer had 100 lines for yawning behind his hand. Vernon Smith had 200 for quite a small slip in con. In third school, the remove were very much on their best behaviour. And in third school, one member of the form was late. Very late. It was at 11:15 that scuttling footsteps were heard in the corridor. Bunter was coming at last, a quarter of an hour late. At the sound of footsteps, Mr. Quelch picked up the cane from his desk. The form-room door hurriedly opened. Every eye in the remove turned on the fat figure that rolled breathlessly in. Then there was a general gasp. It was Bunter. There was no doubt that it was Bunter. Bunter would have been known anywhere, if only by his circumference. But the fat face from which his spectacles gleamed was unrecognizable. Fellows gazed at him like fellows in a dream. Utterly unconscious of Cecil Reginald Temple's artistic work on his fat face, Bunter was naturally unaware of anything out of the common. Why his entrance caused all the remove to stare at him transfixed, as if he'd been the grisly spectre of a Bunter, he didn't know. He blinked anxiously at Mr. Quelch. I'm sorry, I'm late, sir. Mr. Quelch did not answer. He just gazed. The ghost of Banquo did not startle Macbeth more than the blue-visaged owl startled the remove and the remove master. Mr. Quelch found his voice at last. "Bunter," he gasped, "how
dare you enter the form room like this?"
Bunter could only blink at him. He had to enter the form room to join up with the remove. It was difficult to understand Quelch's question. "Is he crackers?" whispered Bob Cherry. "Is he off his onion?" Quelch's amazement turned into towering wrath.
"Bunter, how dare you walk into this form room in such a state?"
Is anything the matter, sir?" stammered Bunter.
"The matter? How dare you come into this form room, Bunter, looking like that?"
Like what, sir?" stuttered the amazed owl.
"Your face!"
shrieked Mr. Quelch. Bunter blinked at him. Bunter's own opinion of his face was that it was unusually good-looking.
"Well, what's the matter with my face?" he exclaimed.
"Upon my word, Bunter, are you not aware of your extraordinary face?"
Bunter crimsoned under blue paint. This was really too much. He forgot even his dread of his form master's cane in his indignation.
"You let my face alone! What about yours, if you come to that?"
"What?"
gasped Mr. Quelch.
"I jolly well know that Dr. Locke wouldn't like you to make jokes about a fellow's face in form, sir," exclaimed Bunter indignantly.
"Bless my soul, Bunter, your extraordinary face!"
"'Tain't extraordinary!" yelled the indignant owl. "Not so jolly ugly as yours, anyhow."
"Ha ha 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 ha!" yelled the remove.
"Bunter, why have you painted your face in this extraordinary manner?"
Bunter jumped.
Painted? Who painted his face?"
It dawned on the remove and the remove master that Bunter was unaware of the remarkable state of his fat countenance. Lord Mauleverer stepped from his place, taking his little pocket mirror from his waistcoat pocket. He held it up before Bunter. Bunter blinked into the little mirror. What he saw there made him bound clear of the form room floor.
"Oh, crikey! Crikey!" spluttered Bunter. That ain't my face. Why, it's all blue! Ha 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 ha! Some beast has been painting my face!" yelled Bunter.
"Bunter, do you mean to say that your face was painted in this absurd manner without your knowledge?"
exclaimed Mr. Quelch.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Some beast must have done it while I was asleep. I went to sleep in break, sir. I was sleepy after last night, and you wouldn't let me stay in after rising bell. Ha 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 ha!"
"Silence!" roared Mr. Quelch. "Such a jest upon this foolish boy is not a laughing matter. Bunter, you will take 300 lines for being late for class, and you will stay in this afternoon until you have written them. Now go and wash your face, you foolish and absurd boy."
Billy Bunter went. He was glad at any rate to escape Quelch's cane. But 300 lines on a half-holiday and an extra wash were almost as bad. It was a dismal and disgruntled owl that returned to the form room, newly swept and garnished. The paint had been washed off, but Bunter was still looking blue. "Cut," suggested Bob Cherry. "Rot," said Johnny Bull. "What do you think, Inky?" asked Harry Wharton. Harry Jamset Ramsing shook his dusky head.
"The cutfulness is not the proper caper, my esteemed chum. The worthy and ludicrous Quelch would be infuriated."
"Let him be," said Bob. 5 fellows were faced with a problem. It was Wednesday, a half-holiday. The arrangements for that half-holiday had been made long since. Harry Wharton and Co., not being prophets, had been quite unable to foresee the consequences of letting the fat and fatuous owl of the remove join their picnic after class the previous day. The consequences had been 300 lines each, all round. Those lines had to be handed in to Mr. Quelch before they sallied forth to carry out the plans already made for that half-holiday. On the other hand, an appointment was an appointment and had to be kept. And the appointment was with certain members of the 4th form at Cliff House School, to wit, Marjorie Hazeldine and Clara Trevelyan. And Bob Cherry was very anxious not to miss seeing Marjorie. Hence his suggestion of cutting. "It's all that fat idiot Bunter's fault," said Bob. "Marjorie and Clara will expect to see us at Courtfield Bridge, as we arranged." Harry Wharton wrinkled his brows. 300 Latin lines was a large order. No member of the famous five, especially Bob, wished to fail to keep the tryst. On the other hand, Quelch had to be considered. "Look here, we've got to do the lines," said the captain of the Remove at last. "We shall have to rush them through."
"I say, you fellows!"
Billy Bunter rolled up to the worried and troubled group in the Remove passage.
"Blow away, barrel," snorted Bob. "Oh, really, Cherry? You heard Quelch give me 300 lines this morning. Who's going to help me with my lines? I think you fellows ought to help, after all I've done for you. I say, suppose you do 50 each."
"What?" yelled Bob.
50, said Bunter, blinking at him. "If you fellows do 50 each, that's 250 out of the 300. See? I'll do the other 50. I'm not lazy, I hope. What about it?"
The famous five did not answer in words. They were overwhelmed with lines of their own owing to Bunter. Instead of answering Bunter in words, they grasped the fat junior and sat him down in the Remove passage with a bump. "Yoo-hoo!" roared Bunter. Bunter sat and spluttered for breath, and the famous five dispersed to their various studies to get on with their own lines, not Bunter's. It was 4 o'clock when, at last, the lines were done and delivered to Quelch's study. And when Bob Cherry shot out of the old gateway of Greyfriars, his comrades had hard work to keep up with the strides of his long and sinewy legs. "The shortcut takes us out close to Courtfield Bridge. No other way of getting there in time," Bob explained over his shoulder. His friends followed him with worried looks. It was true that the short-cut through Popper Court Woods saved more than half the distance, but the prospect of going out of bounds again in Popper Court Woods, after what had happened only the day before, was quite dismaying to Bob's chums. "Have a little sense," urged Johnny Bull. "After yesterday," said Nugent. Bob Cherry turned a deaf ear, in fact 2 deaf ears. Instead of heeding remonstrance and argument, he stepped aside from the lane and made a jump at the fence bordering it. On the other side of that fence were the forbidden precincts of Popper Court. "Stop, you ass!" hooted Johnny Bull. Bob glanced down at them. "You fellows go the other way if you like," he said. "I'm going to be at Courtfield Bridge on time, as I said I would." Bob dropped on the inner side of the fence and disappeared. His friends exchanged glances. "Well, I suppose we're sticking to him?" asked Nugent. Harry Wharton nodded. Snort from Johnny Bull. "Oh, let's! It's a silly-ass thing to do, but we are a lot of silly asses, aren't we?" And having delivered this opinion, Johnny clambered up the fence. The 5 juniors picked their way through the thick wood, and soon glimpsed the leafy footpath which they had followed the day before, when they had encountered the trespassing gentleman with the pimples. But before stepping out into the open path, Harry Wharton stopped Bob by catching his arm, and came to a halt. "Quiet," whispered Harry. "I can hear somebody." Keeping back in the thick underwood, invisible from the footpath, the juniors all bent their ears to listen. Someone, not yet in sight, was coming along the footpath. A long, lean gentleman with an eyeglass stuck in his eye came into sight. It was Sir Hilton Popper, the Lord of Popper Court himself. "Oh, crumbs," murmured Bob. "Old Popper!" Sir Hilton Popper came on with his jerky strides. The juniors had only to wait quietly till he'd passed, and then their way would be clear. They waited in breathless silence. Sir Hilton was almost abreast of the spot where the thickets hid the famous 5. He stopped on the other side of the footpath, where a fallen log lay under the branches of a spreading beech, and to the utter dismay of the juniors, he sat down on that log and lighted a cigarette. With deep feelings they remained perfectly still, waiting for the baronet to finish his smoke and go on his way. And their feelings became deeper when, having finished his cigarette, Sir Hilton Popper, instead of going on his way, lighted another. "Wretches!" 5 fellows very nearly jumped. That sudden exclamation from Sir Hilton Popper, shooting out suddenly like a bullet, startled them. It seemed certain that staring directly towards their thicket he must have spotted them. But it was only a false alarm. Sir Hilton was not addressing them. He was speaking to himself, referring to some persons unknown of whom he was thinking. "Rats," said Sir Hilton. The Lord of Poppercourt threw away the stump of his second cigarette. But he did not rise from his seat. Instead of that, he took out a pocket-book from an inner pocket and opened it. From the pocket-book, he drew a folded printed paper. 5 pairs of eyes being on him at such close range, the juniors could not help catching sight of the words "income tax" in larger print than the rest. They suppressed a chuckle. This was the clue to Sir Hilton's ire. It is improbable that any citizen was ever really pleased to receive a demand from his inspector of taxes for nearly half his income. Certainly Sir Hilton Popper was not smiling. He was scowling almost like a demon in a pantomime. "Spendthrifts! Wasters!" barked Sir Hilton. "How is a man to meet such demands?" asked Sir Hilton, apparently addressing that question to the green thicket, where the juniors were still as mice. "Last year I had to sell a farm. This year I must sell the stamp." The word stamp rang a bell, as it were, to the juniors. They remembered Billy Bunter's story of the burglar and his extraordinary statement that the nocturnal marauder had stolen a stamp from Popper Court. "My stamp!" Sir Hilton's tone was now more mournful than angry. "My Blue Mauritius, the gem of my collection. The Blue Mauritius will have to go." He shook his head sadly. Evidently the Blue Mauritius was dear to Sir Hilton's heart. "And to think," Sir Hilton drew a deep breath, "to think that that burglar, that scoundrel, that he got out of the house with it, that he might have escaped with it, had he not fallen over that stupid boy Bunter in his flight. A £2,000 stamp, good gad!" The hidden juniors barely repressed a chuckle. This was the other side of Bunter's tale of burglar catching. "The wretch! The villain! The rascal!" Sir Hilton's opinion of burglars seemed even worse than his opinion of tax-gatherers. "The dastard! The knave! The epithets seemed to fail Sir Hilton. "Luckily he's now safe in the cells, and my stamp is safe. But it must be sold." From a little socket in the pocket-book, Sir Hilton Popper drew a small object. The juniors could see that it was a postage stamp, but they realized now that it was something very special and precious in the postage stamp line. It was, in fact, a post office Blue Mauritius, worth the humble sum of 2d when issued 100 years earlier in the British colony of Mauritius, worth at the present day at least £2,000. Sir Hilton sat with the stamp between finger and thumb, gazing at it. Only a fervid philatelist could have fully understood and sympathized with his feelings as he gazed. Harry Wharton and co. were not unsympathetic, but they did wish that Sir Hilton would pack it up and go. "Oh," breathed Nugent suddenly. "Pimples," breathed Bob Cherry. The juniors stared blankly across the footpath, past the baronet sitting on the log under the beech tree. From behind that tree, a face had appeared. Sir Hilton, unaware of him, did not stir, but all 5 of the Greyfriars juniors saw him and recognized at once the man they'd seen in the wood the previous day, pasty face, pimples, spotted necktie and all. And they saw that his narrow foxy eyes were fixed upon the precious stamp in Sir Hilton's brown fingers, his unpleasant face eager with greed. The juniors stared across the footpath at him, hardly knowing what to do, but at that point the baronet rose from the log, apparently to resume his walk along the footpath. He slipped the precious stamp back into the pocket-book and closed it. Then, with a suddenness that took even the watching juniors entirely by surprise, the foxy-faced man with the pimples acted. With a spring as swift as that of a panther, he was out of the wood into the footpath, and before the baronet even realized that he was there, he had snatched the pocket-book from Sir Hilton's hand. He shot across the footpath and plunged into the thicket on the opposite side. Had that thicket been untenanted, as the man naturally supposed, certainly he would have escaped with his precious plunder. But 5 Greyfriars Juniors were in that thicket, and the thief, crashing through, crashed right into them. He gave a gasping yell of amazement and alarm as hands grabbed him on all sides, and he went heavily to the ground, Harry Wharton snatching the pocketbook from his hand as he crashed. "We've got him!" shouted Bob Cherry breathlessly. Sir Hilton, his old mastiff face dizzy with astonishment, came striding across the footpath. The Popper intellect did not work quickly, but Sir Hilton realized that a thief had snatched his pocketbook and bolted into the wood with it, and in a startled, flabbergasted state he was starting in pursuit. He plunged on and almost stumbled over a bunch of schoolboys clinging to a wriggling, struggling, panting man. "We've got him, sir," panted Bob. By gad! He's like an eel," gasped Johnny Bull. "That man has robbed me," gasped Sir Hilton Popper. "Good gad! Give me a hold of him. I will secure the scoundrel." The baronet's grasp closed on the collar of the man's coat. The juniors let go. Sir Hilton was more than able to deal with the sneak thief, who was hardly more than half his size and weight. With a grip of iron on the little man's collar, the long, lean gentleman held him rather like a big dog holding a rat. "By gad! My stamp! Scoundrel! No doubt a confederate of that rascal last night! Stop him! Good gad!" With eel-like agility, the little slim man suddenly wriggled out of his coat, and leaving it in the astonished baronet's hands, darted away. In a split second, he vanished into the wood, running like a deer. Sir Hilton staggered with the empty coat in his hands. "Good gad! The villain! My stamp! My pocket-book!" "Here it is, sir," exclaimed Harry Wharton. The baronet blinked at it. "I grabbed it when the man ran into us, sir," explained Harry with a smile. Sir Hilton almost snatched the pocket-book from the junior's hand. Taking no further heed of the fleeing man or of the bunch of breathless schoolboys, he opened it to make sure that the precious stamp was still safe within. His gasp of relief as he saw the Blue Mauritius safe and sound was like the air escaping from a punctured tire. Harry Wharton and Co. grinned at one another. Having ascertained that the Blue Mauritius was still in his possession, Sir Hilton restored the pocket-book to his pocket and became aware of the existence of the Greyfriars Juniors again. "Oh, well, thank you, Wally," he said. "I think your name is Wally." "Wharton, sir," said Harry meekly. "Oh, yes, Wharton, yes, I'm much obliged to you, Wharton. You acted very promptly in getting the pocket-book away from that rascal. It contains an article of great value, Wally." "Does it, sir?" murmured Harry, and the other fellows contrived not to smile. Yes, a very great value indeed," said Sir Hilton. "Yes, by acting so promptly and sensibly, you've saved me from a very serious loss, Wally." "Wharton, sir." Oh, yes, Wharton, quite. What are you doing here in my woods?" added Sir Hilton. But if the juniors were trespassing, it had been a very fortunate circumstance for him. The gentleman with the pimples would certainly have got away with the Blue Mauritius otherwise. Well, never mind that," he said quite genially. "Go away at once, and we'll say nothing more about it." "Thank you, sir," said Harry. "I'm very much obliged to you, Warrington, and your friends, but go away at once." And Harry Wharton and Co. went away at once, at a trot. They came out in a cheery, if rather breathless bunch on the bank of the Sark, with Courtfield Bridge in view up the river. At a little distance, coming from Courtfield, 2 graceful girlish figures could be seen approaching. Bob waved his cap to Marjorie and Clara. Tom Redwing and Herbert Vernon Smith were out for a bike ride that half-holiday. The long white road across Courtfield Common, with the town in the distance, stretched before the 2 cyclists, bordered by clumps of hawthorn. Ahead of them, on the road, the bounder sighted a tall figure. It was easy to recognize the lord of Popper Court, even from a back view. A mischievous gleam came into the bounder's eyes. "Rather a lark to make the old ass jump, Reddy," he said. "Eh? What?" asked Tom Redwing, startled. "Keep quiet till we're just behind him, and then bang on your bell like Billy-o, and I'll do the same. Make him jump, what?" grinned the bounder. "Oh, don't be an ass, Smithy. Old Popper's a governor of the school. 10 to 1 he'll report you to the head if you cheek him." "My dear man," drawled the bounder, "a cyclist's bound to ring his bell to warn a pedestrian walking in the road in front of him. Are you on, Reddy?" "No." "Then watch me." The bounder put on speed and shot ahead of his comrade. Redwing pedalled on at the same pace as before, watching him with an anxious look. Sir Hilton Popper was far too lofty and important a gentleman to be made to jump like a kangaroo. But Smithy, as usual, was reckless of impossible consequences. He put on a burst of speed, leaving Redwing behind, and then freewheeled, his machine making scarcely a sound as it whizzed on. Smithy was within 20 yards of the unsuspecting baronet, and his hand was ready on the bell. Suddenly, from the clumps of hawthorns beside the road, as Sir Hilton strode past, a figure shot out and leapt right at the baronet. Smithy glimpsed a pimply face and a spotted necktie. In utter amazement, the bounder stared, quite forgetful of his intended prank on the lord of Popper Court. Sir Hilton was a big man, and the man with the pimples was small and slim. But the sudden and unexpected rush upended the tall baronet, and he went sprawling headlong over on his back in the dust of the Courtfield Road. Even as he crashed, the pimpled man was upon him, thrusting a thievish hand into a pocket and jerking therefrom a pocketbook. The bounder's astonished eyes saw all that passed, and Redwing further back saw it all as clearly. The pimply man sprang back into the hawthorns that bordered the road. He was gone in the twinkling of an eye, reappearing on the further side of the hawthorns and running across the open common like a deer. Hardly a couple of seconds later, Vernon Smith jammed on his brakes and jumped down at the side of the spluttering lord of Popper Court. Sir Hilton sat up in the dust, his hat off, his eyeglass streaming at the end of its cord. I've been robbed! My pocketbook! The Blue Mauritius!" "Let me help you, sir." Smithy lent a helping hand, and the dizzy old gentleman tottered to his feet. My pocketbook!" Sir Hilton fairly shrieked. "The stamp! He's robbed me!" Redwing came whizzing up. "After him, Smithy," he shouted. "He's cut across the common, sir. We're getting after him," called back the bounder, as he jumped on his machine and tore after Redwing. Sir Hilton was left standing in the road, gasping and spluttering. Rough as Courtfield Common was, a bicycle covered the ground faster than the swiftest runner could hope to cover it, and they gained on the running man at every whirl of the pedals. Slim Judson tore on desperately, with the two cyclists gaining fast. Cecil Reginald Temple, of the Greyfriars Forth, had the surprise of his life that afternoon. Temple was out on his jigger. At a leisurely pace and in a cheery frame of mind, he pedalled gently along Oak Lane towards the Courtfield Road, thinking about nothing in particular. And when a slim man, panting for breath and red with haste, burst suddenly into the lane from a clump of trees on the edge of the common, Cecil Reginald gave him only a careless, disapproving glance. Temple of the Forth was not perhaps very bright, but the brightest fellow at Greyfriars could hardly have guessed that an absolute stranger would suddenly rush at him, knock him off his bike, and grab the machine away. Cecil Reginald Temple found himself suddenly sprawling in the dust, while a slim man with a pimply face was shooting away on his bike, going like the wind for the Courtfield Road. "Oh!" was all Temple said. But in less than a minute, two cyclists came whizzing off the common into the leafy lane. Temple transferred his dizzy gaze from the disappearing bike to Vernon Smith and Redwing. "Look!" Temple pointed with a shaking finger. "He pitched me off and pinched my bike." "We'll get him," said the bounder between his teeth. At the corner, where Oak Lane joined the high road, the hunted man cast desperate glances to and fro. The man was, for the moment, doubtful in which direction to turn. But that was settled for him by the sight of 3 schoolboy cyclists coming from the direction of Courtfield, Peter Todd, Tom Brown, and Squiff of the Remove. Smithy and Redwing sighted them at the same moment, and the bounder yelled at the top of his voice, "Stop, thief!" The three juniors stared round. "Stop him!" roared Redwing. Peter Todd waved his hand. Squiff and Tom Brown shouted back, but they had no chance of stopping the fugitive, for he turned in the other direction and tore away towards Greyfriars. 5 cyclists careered on after the man with the pimples. "We've got him," chuckled Smithy. "Got him by the short hairs. There'll be a dozen fellows to stop him when we get near the school." They were nearing Greyfriars. The school gates came in sight, wide open on a half-holiday. "Look!" yelled Squiff. "There's Wingate and Gwyn!" Ahead of the hapless fugitive, coming up the road from Friardale, Wingate and Gwyn of the 6th form appeared in sight. They became suddenly alert at the sight of the chase rushing towards them. "Stop, thief!" yelled the bounder. "Stop him, Wingate!" And they stood in the middle of the road, hardly a dozen yards from the gateway. The pimpled man stared at them. Then he stared back over his shoulder at 5 cyclists coming on. For a moment he was nonplussed, and then, swinging round his machine, he shot in at the great wide-open gateway on his left. What that gateway was, and to what it gave admittance, Slim Judson did not know. Probably he'd never even heard of Greyfriars School. Slim Judson careered onward into the Greyfriars Quad.
"I say, Fishy, old man."
"Yep."
"Come in, old fellow."
Fishy was coming down the remove passage when Bunter's fat voice hailed him from the open doorway of number 7 study. He paused, but he did not come in.
"I say, come in. I want to speak to you, old chap," urged Bunter.
"I guess I can hear you from here, old fat pie can," said Fisher T. Fish. "Cut it short. There's something going on in the quad, and I'm going down to see what's on."
The fact is, Fishy, I've got something I want to sell. Something jolly valuable, Fishy. Come in, old chap."
"Oh, I guess I'll give it the once-over," said Fisher T. Fish more cordially, and he stepped into number 7 study. Fisher T. Fish, the businessman of the remove, was always ready to do business.
"I hate parting with it, old chap," said Bunter sadly. "I just hate selling my gold watch."
"Your water?"
My gold watch. Yes, it was a present from my Uncle Carter, and I believe he gave 20 guineas for it."
"Huh, then they did him out of £20 15 shillings, said Fisher T. Fish derisively. "Beast!" That gold watch of Bunter's, in fact, was a little too well known in the remove. If it had ever kept time, it must have been before Bunter came to Greyfriars School. Nobody there had ever heard it tick. Once or twice Bunter had opened the case and jerked a fat thumb into the works in an attempt to get it going. But even that heroic method had never had any success. Bunter held it out for Fishy's inspection, and Fishy condescended to give it a contemptuous glance.
Just look at it, old chap. Even if it ain't solid gold, it looks just as if it was."
"It sure looks as much like solid gold as a brass poker," said Fisher T. Fish, taking the watch and turning it over in his bony fingers.
"Splendid timekeeper," assured Bunter. "Look here, I'll take £1."
Fisher T. Fish blinked at him. "Say, what do you know?" he exclaimed. "Did you say £1, Bunter?"
"Yes, I'll take £1, old chap."
"I guess you'll have to look for a genuine bonehead to give you one," grinned Fisher T. Fish. Billy Bunter breathed hard.
Well, look here, what will you give me for it?"
he demanded. Fisher's reply was concise but clear. "Nix," he said.
"Oh, really, Fishy?"
"I guess I wouldn't take it as a gift, old-timer." Fisher T. Fish dropped the watch on the table. "So long."
"Oh, look here, you cheeky beast!"
roared Bunter, but Fisher T. Fish was gone. Bunter blinked out of the study after the departing Fishy and shook a fat fist after him. But the next moment he burst into a fat chuckle. Fisher T. Fish had reached the end of the passage when a figure came suddenly bolting across the landing into the passage, crashing right into Fishy. There was a fearful howl from Fisher T. Fish as he went sprawling under the collision. "Oh, great snakes!" cachinated Bunter. Fisher T-Fish sprawled on his back, and over him sprawled the figure that had crashed into him. And Billy Bunter, blinking from the doorway of number 7 study, chuckled loud and long. "Stop, thief! Collar him!" It was a roar in the old quadrangle of Greyfriars. Slim Judson glared round him like a trapped animal. In the Greyfriars quad, he was in the middle of a hornet's nest. Slim Judson careered on wildly. Mr. Quelch stared from one study window, Mr. Hacker from another, and from the big bay window of common room, Mr. Prout, master of the 5th, leaned out, staring with popping eyes. "Bag him!" Potter of the 5th jumped in the way of the bike and grabbed at the rider. Mr. Judson swerved to avoid him. The bike wobbled wildly and curled up. Slim Judson landed on his feet like a cat. He dodged Potter's clutching hand and ran. After him! Crowds of fellows were after him, and there really seemed no chance. But with a Blue Mauritius worth £2,000 in his pocket, Mr. Judson ran and twisted and doubled like a hunted animal. He came to a panting halt under the big bay window of common room, from which Mr. Prout leaned. "What is all this?" boomed Prout. In sheer desperation, Slim Judson leapt up on the low sill of the bay window and plunged headlong in, knocking Mr. Prout aside as he did so. "Oh!" gasped Prout as he staggered. "Stop him!" came a roar from the quad. "Collar him, Prout!" yelled the bounder. Faces swarmed at the window. Slim Judson, plunging in, landed on hands and knees, but he bounced up like a ball. But as he bounced, a plump hand descended on his shoulder. Prout grasped him. "Stop!" boomed Prout. "How dare you!" Mr. Prout had not expected to receive a vicious jab on the widest part of his circumference. He staggered back from that jab, gasping for wind, his grasp slipping from Slim's shoulder. Slim Judson cut across the room to the door. Stop, ruffian!" gurgled Prout. Slim was not likely to stop. He fairly whizzed across common room, tore open the door, and tore out. Mr. Quelch was approaching with Mr. Hacker.
Bless my soul! Here is the man!"
exclaimed Mr. Quelch. Quelch strode at Slim with a grim brow, followed by Hacker. Quelch was not a man to be jabbed like Prout. Quelch could have handled Slim as easily as a terrier dealing with a rat. Slim did not wait to be handled. He bounded up the stairs as a score of fellows rushed at him. He was well ahead of pursuit as he bounded on the study landing. He stared round him. Then he ran up the 3 steps to the remove landing. From that landing a passage opened, and Slim bolted into it like a hunted rabbit into a burrow. Crash! Fisher T-Fish, though he knew that some unaccustomed uproar was going on below, naturally was not expecting a hunted man to shoot into the passage like a bolt from a crossbow. "Oh!" gasped Bunter. It had been fearfully amusing to see Fisher T-Fish knocked over and sprawled over by someone suddenly running into the passage, but as that someone bounded up with a red, furious face and blazing eyes, Bunter ceased to be amused. Panting, the hunted man stared up the passage. His stare revealed only one person in the passage ahead of him, a fat junior who was blinking at him in amazement and terror. Only for a second the man stood there, panting. Then he came running up the passage. Bunter certainly could not have stopped him if the thought of doing so had occurred to him. But that thought did not occur to Bunter. What occurred to Bunter was to take to his heels, which he promptly did. Few Greyfriars fellows would have deemed Bunter capable of the speed with which he flew up the remove passage and bolted up the box-room stair at the end. Utterly unheeding him, Slim Judson hurtled on. But as he reached the open door of number 7 study, where the fat junior had been standing, he paused. Then he darted into the study. Slim's peculiar way of life had taught him to take quick decisions. Swiftly but softly, he shut the door after him. Then he stood gulping in breath in great gasps, while the perspiration streamed down his face. A roar of voices, a trampling of feet, sounded from the direction of the landing and surged up the passage. "This way!" the bounder was shouting. If they looked into that study, he was cornered, like a rat in a trap. But the rush went by the door of number 7 study. The chase thundered on up the passage to the further end. A sharp voice came to Slim's ears. Only the shut door was between him and Mr. Quelch.
"Vernon Smith? Redwing? Todd? Have you seen the man?"
"He ran up this passage, sir. I guess he pulled me over, sir."
"He must be found and secured. The prefects will look for him."
"We can handle him all right, sir."
"That will do, Vernon Smith."
Mr. Quelch was interrupted by a shout from up the passage. "This way! Somebody's in the box room! Come on, you fellows!"
Vernon Smith, remain where you are. Wingate, Gwyn, Loader, please search the box room for the man."
Every word came clearly to the breathless man listening inside the study door. Mr. Quelch stalked on up the passage and ascended the box-room stair with Wingate, Gwyn, and Loader. Slim Judson gritted his teeth as he listened. It was a respite, but likely to be only a brief one, for certainly they would not find him in any box-room, and a search of the other rooms was sure to follow. On tiptoe, Slim crossed to the window of number 7 and looked out. There was a drop of 30 feet outside the window, and as if that was not enough, there were a dozen or more Greyfriars fellows in sight below. He backed quickly from the window. There was no escape that way. It was borne in upon the wretched thief's mind that there was no escape at all. With deep feelings, Slim had to realize that the game was up, and that he was booked to join his confederate in the cells at Courtfield Police Station. And in his pocket was Sir Hilton Popper's pocketbook, containing the Blue Mauritius worth £2,000, the biggest prize Slim had ever landed in all his career as a snapper-up of other people's property. His confederate had got away with it the previous night, only to be captured and lose it again. Slim, with what had seemed to him a great spot of luck, had got away with it in his turn, only to meet with exactly the same fate. But Slim's cunning brain was working actively. If he could hide the stamp somewhere, they would find the pocketbook on him, but not the Blue Mauritius. So small an object could easily be hidden. And later, when he came out of the stone jug, he had a chance of recovering it. He stared round him in search of a hiding place for the stamp. And a sudden, hopeful gleam came into his eyes as they fell upon a big watch lying on the table. Some schoolboy, no doubt that fat fellow he'd seen at the study door, had left that watch there. Slim snatched it up. He had found the hiding place he wanted for the stolen stamp. He snapped open the case at the back. In another moment, the case was snapped shut on a post office Blue Mauritius tuppenny worth £2,000. Slim replaced the watch on the table. It was a wrench, a tough wrench, to part with the Blue Mauritius, even with a sporting chance of getting it back again later. But it was the only chance he had of getting his thievish fingers on it again. They would search for it. There was little doubt about that. Search high and low, but the last place they would think of looking into would be a schoolboy's watch. And sooner or later, Mr. Judson would interview the owner of that watch in some quiet spot outside the school. Feeling slightly relieved in his mind, Mr. Judson listened to the buzz of voices outside the study. Billy Bunter flew up the removed passage and shot into the box room like an arrow from a bow and slammed the door after him. He grabbed the bolt and jammed it home. Then, and not till then, did he totter towards one of the boxes, sit down on the same, and gasp and gasp and gasp for breath. Footsteps on the stairs made him jump like a startled rabbit. Then there was a shout, followed by more shouting, a trampling of feet, and the door handle was turned. Bunter, with quaking heart, watched the door with popping eyes. Then came a voice which, to Bunter's utter amazement, was that of George Wingate, of the 6th form, captain of Greyfriars. "The door's fastened inside, sir."
"Then the man must be here."
This, to Bunter's further amazement, was the well-known rap of his form master, Mr. Quelch. "Oh, scissors!" gasped Bunter. "Knock, knock," came sharply on the panels.
"Open this door at once,"
came Mr. Quelch's sharp voice.
"I advise you to open it. Otherwise the door will be forced.
Billy Bunter tottered off the box and dragged back the bolt. The door flew open, and Wingate of the Sixth appeared in the doorway. The stalwart captain of Greyfriars had his fists clenched and his hands up, ready to tackle the hunted intruder. Bunter! It's only Bunter here, sir, stuttered Wingate. Mr. Quelch rustled in after Wingate. He gave the gasping fat owl a glare, and his sharp glance shot round the box-room. There was no sign of the hunted man.
"Bunter? What are you doing here? Why was the door bolted?"
thundered Mr. Quelch.
Where is the man? Have you seen him?
Yes, sir. Yeah, he was after me, stuttered Bunter. An awful-looking man.
Mr. Quelch gave an angry snort.
Pah! No one is here, Wingate. This utterly stupid boy has caused us to waste time. This man must be found and secured. Come, at once.
Mr. Quelch whirled round and departed.
"Search the attics at once,"
rapped Mr. Quelch. "Yes, sir." Wingate, Gwyn, and Loder proceeded to search the attics. Mr. Quelch stood on the little landing, frowning. Billy Bunter edged past him and rolled down the stair to the remove passage. Bunter rolled hurriedly towards his study. If there was the remotest chance of that desperate-looking man reappearing in the remove passage, Bunter preferred to be safe in his study with the door shut and locked. He opened the door of number 7 study and rolled in. A brassy glimmer on the table from the sunlight at the window caught his eyes and his spectacles. He remembered that big gold watch which he'd utterly forgotten in his terrified flight from the awful-looking man who had so suddenly appeared on the scene. He rolled across to the table and picked up the watch. Fisher T. Fish had disdained it and appraised its value at nix. But it was Bunter's gold watch, and he hooked it on the chain and restored it to his waistcoat pocket. Then he turned to shut the door and turn the key. But he did not shut the door, neither did he turn the key, for as he turned, he became aware of another inhabitant of the study, a slight man with a pimply face and a spotted necktie, backing against the wall beside the doorway. For a single instant, Slim Judson looked at Bunter, and Bunter looked at Slim Judson, his eyes popping through his spectacles. Then a yell of terror woke every echo of the remove passage.
Yaroo! Help! He's here! I say, you fellows, help! Fire! Murder! Help! Yaroo!
What the jolly old dickens! I say, that's Bunter! That frantic yell rang and echoed along the passage, from the landing at one end to the box-room stair at the other. "Oh, Gad, he's in Bunter's study!" yelled the bounder. "Come on, you men!" Smithy led a rush to number 7. He hurled the door open and rushed in. A score of fellows crammed round the doorway. From Bunter's frantic yelling, it might have been supposed that the fat owl was struggling for his life in the grip of a desperado. But it was not quite so bad as that. Bunter had backed as far as the window to get as far as possible from the man in the spotted necktie, on whom his eyes and spectacles were fixed in terror. But Slim Judson knew that the game was up, and he was not in the least disposed to make a fight for it against overwhelming odds. He was leaning on the wall beside the door, with his hands in his pockets. "Here he is!" roared Smithy. Slim Judson gave the crowding schoolboys a black look, but was otherwise quite lamb-like. "Here I am," he said. "That blinking window's too high from the ground to give a covey a chance." The bounder paused. He was ready to rush and grasp, but evidently it was not necessary. "We've got you, my man," he said. "You have," agreed Slim. "And you've got old Popper's pocketbook," added Smithy. Slim gave him a sharp look and recognized him as one of the 2 schoolboys on bikes who'd started the pursuit. His foxy eyes glinted at Smithy. "You was quick off the mark, you was, young gentleman. If you hadn't been so handy, I wouldn't be here now. I'd just like to meet you in some quiet place on a dark evening, I would." The bounder merely laughed. I say, you fellows, get hold of him!" howled Billy Bunter from the window. "Coming quietly?" asked Smithy. "Quiet as a lamb," answered Mr. Judson. Take his other arm, ready. Vernon Smith took one arm of the captured pickpocket, Redwing the other. They marched him out of the study, much to Billy Bunter's relief, into the passage, into the midst of a buzzing swarm of fellows of all forms. "Somebody better call Quelch," chuckled the bounder. "He might be interested to hear that we've got the man." Peter Todd ran up the passage and mounted the box-room stair. From the landing, Mr. Quelch turned a freezing eye on him.
"Todd, go down at once."
"But, sir—"
"No juniors are required here,"
snapped Mr. Quelch. "We've got the man, sir," cried Peter. "He was hiding in a study." Mr. Quelch hurried down the box-room stair. Wingate and Gwyn and Loder hurried after him. Mr. Quelch arrived on the scene.
"Wingate, Gwyn, take charge of this man, and bring him downstairs. I will telephone for a constable immediately."
Vernon Smith and Redwing handed the prisoner over to the two prefects. Half an hour later, Mr. Judson, in charge of a constable from Courtfield, was gone, leaving Greyfriars still in a buzz of excitement. Hello, hello, hello. Old Popper, popping up again. Harry Wharton and Co., as yet unaware of the spot of excitement at the school during their absence, were walking back to Greyfriars from Cliff House, after tea with Marjorie and her friends. They had almost reached the school gates when the Popper Court car whirled into sight, with Sir Hilton sitting in it as bolt upright as a ramrod. His whole look was that of a man in the worst temper ever. "I wonder what's biting him now," remarked Bob. "He's going to Greyfriars," said Harry Wharton, as the car slowed to turn in at the gates. "Hello, hello, hello. He wants us," exclaimed Bob. The car, about to turn in at the school gates, had stopped as Sir Hilton sighted the 5 juniors in the road. He leaned from the window and waved an imperious hand, evidently a sign for the schoolboys to come up. They capped the baronet respectfully as they came up. "Has the stamp been found?" barked Sir Hilton. The stamp?" stammered Harry, astonished by the question. Unaware of the wild adventures of the Blue Mauritius since they'd seen Sir Hilton in the wood that afternoon, the famous 5 were quite at a loss. "Yes, a stamp that was in my pocket-book," barked Sir Hilton. "Has it been found?" Has it been lost?" stammered Harry. "Oh, the boy's a fool. The stamp was not in the pocket-book when the man was searched at the police station. Has it been found in the school? From all accounts, he cannot possibly have got rid of it before he reached the school." Wharton could only stutter. His comrades could only stare. No member of the famous 5 was able to make head or tail of this. "Are you a blockhead? Were you among the boys who seized him in the school?" "Well, we've been out all the afternoon," gasped Harry. "What? Oh, well, then you know nothing of the matter." "No, nothing at all." You're wasting my time with your stupidity. Pah! Drive on, James." Sir Hilton sat back, and the car turned in at the gates. Harry Wharton and Co. stared after it, and stared at one another. The famous 5 went in at the gates, extremely curious to know what had happened during their absence. They found a crowd of fellows in the quad, and a buzz of excited voices. I say, you fellas, you've missed it," squeaked Billy Bunter. "I say, they got him in my study." "Got who?" "Him," said Bunter. "Him! He was hiding in my study behind the door, you know, and I never saw him when I went in, and then I turned round, and I saw him, and—" "But what's happened?" cried Bob Cherry. "A man picked old Popper's pocket on the Courtfield Road and cut across the common," said Redwing. "Smithy and I saw him and got after him on our bikes." "We were after him," said Squiff, "and he dodged into the school." "Nearly had him when he bounced in at common room window, knocked old Prout out of the way," chuckled the bounder. "Chased him all over the house. And we got him in a removed study. I say, fellas, it was my study, and when I found him there, I just called out to the fellows." "Yelled like mad for help, you mean?" "Oh, really, Smithy?" The famous 5 pieced it together from what a dozen or more fellows were telling them all at once. "What was he like, Smithy?" "A skinny little blighter, in a spotted tie." "I say, pimples?" asked Bob. Yes, all over his chivvy. Have you seen him?" "I rather think we have," chuckled Bob.
He was after old Popper's pocketbook in the wood this afternoon, and nearly got it. So he had another shot at it and got away with it. They must have got it back when they searched him at the station, said Vernon Smith. Something missing from it, though, said Bob. Well, how the thump do you know? Oh, my dear chap, we get the latest official news, said Bob cheerily. There was a stamp in that pocketbook. A stamp? Repeated the bounder, staring. Not a common or garden stamp, chuckled Bob. It was a tuppenny. A tuppenny stamp? Yes, just that. There are tuppennies and tuppennies, explained Bob. This one happened to be a Blue Mauritius tuppenny worth £2,000. What? And it's missing from the pocketbook. Well, how do you know? Yelled the bounder. Harry Wharton laughed. Easy, he said. Old Popper told us as we came in. That's why he's here. So if any fellow spots a blue tuppenny stamp spotted about the school, it's worth picking up, said Bob. Oh, crikey! Gasped Billy Bunter, his eyes popping behind his spectacles. Did you say £2,000? A Blue Mauritius tuppenny stamp, worth 2,000 quid, dropped about the school. Oh, my hat! There was a buzz of excitement and astonishment. That item of news, supplied by the famous five, put the lid on, so to speak. I say, you fellows, he was in my study. We caught him there, gasped Billy Bunter. Billy Bunter left the crowd in the quad and shot away to the house. If there was an article worth £2,000 lying about Bunter's study, Billy Bunter was going to be the man to find it, if he could. But Billy Bunter was only the first in the field. As the news spread, there was a crowd, not to call it a cram, in number 7 study. With so many eager searchers, the precious stamp, if there, was certain to be discovered. But it was not discovered. It was morning break at Greyfriars a couple of days later. During those days, the excitement of Slim Judson's incursion into the school and the loss of the precious stamp had rather died out. 100 fellows at least had searched for the missing stamp. Policemen from Courtfield had searched for it, and the result had been precisely nil. If that Blue Mauritius was really at Greyfriars, nobody had the faintest idea where to look for it. Harry Wharton and co. had their own affairs to think of, and had rather forgotten Sir Hilton's. I say, will you lend me a... Sorry, old fat man. Oh, really, Cherry? Try Smithy, suggested Bob. Billy Bunter, in the doorway of number 13 study, blinked at the occupants of that study with a devastating blink. You silly ass! You think I've come here to borrow money? Eh? Haven't you? Exclaimed Bob in surprise. No! Roared Bunter. Well, wonders will never cease, said Bob. Look here, you silly cackling ass! Will you lend me your alarm clock? My alarm clock? Repeated Bob blankly. If there was one thing at Greyfriars that Billy Bunter loathed with a deeper loathing than lessons, it was the rising bell in the morning. So his request for the loan of an alarm clock was really astonishing. But you can't eat an alarm clock, argued Bob. What on earth do you want it for? I want to wake up at 10 tonight, yapped Bunter. You want to wake up at 10 tonight? Repeated Bob, almost dazedly. You fat ass, if you're thinking of sneaking down to the pantry after lights out. Tain't that, yelled Bunter. They'll all be fast asleep in the 4th form dorm at 10. Oh, my hat, is there anything to eat in the 4th form dorm? No, tain't that. It's that cheeky beast Temple. You know what he did when I was asleep on Wednesday morning on the landing. Well, Temple won't think it so jolly funny at 10 tonight, said Billy Bunter. If he thinks it's funny to paint a fellow's face while he's asleep, perhaps he'll think it's funny to get a pot of paint on his chivvy while he's asleep himself. Billy Bunter, apparently, was on the warpath. I've borrowed a pot of paint from Gosling's shed, and I've borrowed Toddy's flash lamp. Now all I want is your alarm clock, Bob. Well, said Bob, laughing, you can borrow the alarm clock, old fat man. And Bunter rolled away with the alarm clock under a fat arm. When the remove went up to their dormitory that night, after the lights were out, Billy Bunter sat up in bed
and there was a sound of groping. Bunter was disinterring the alarm clock from a pocket. Crash! Smash! "Oh!" gasped Bunter. "Hello, hello, hello, what's that?" came from Bob Cherry's bed. "Only that beastly clock. I've dropped it. I think the glass is broken. You fat chump." "Beast!" There was more groping as Bunter leaned out of bed and fished for the fallen clock. His fat paw contacted it, and he picked it up. "It's all right. It's still going," said Bunter. "You blithering owl. Oh, really, Cherry, I'll pay for a new glass when my postal order comes. You burbling bloater." "Well, it's going all right," said Bunter. "I've set the alarm for 10, and it's bound to wake me close to my pillow. Now shut up, and let a fellow go to sleep." Bob Cherry continued for several minutes to tell Bunter what he thought of him. Only a deep snore from Bunter's bed answered. Billy Bunter slept, and he snored. And if he dreamed, he did not dream that that bang on the dormitory floor had disarranged the alarm which he'd carefully set for 10 o'clock, and that it was now set for 10 minutes to 2. "Bzzz!" grunted a sleeping fat owl. "Bzzz!" Billy Bunter was a sound sleeper. It was one of the things that Bunter could do really well. But even Bunter emerged from slumber as the alarm clock buzzed and buzzed within a foot of his fat head. Bzzz! That alarm clock had awakened Bunter. It had also awakened several other fellows, which was only to be expected. "Shut up that row, you fat chump. Do you want me to heave a boot at you, Bunter?" I say, you fellows don't know. It'll stop in a minute," answered Bunter peevishly. Bunter was strongly tempted to let the alarm run down, replace his fat head on the pillow, and go to sleep again, leaving Temple of the Fourth unpunished for his sins. "Will you shut up that row?" came a howl from Bolsover Major. "I tell you it'll stop in a minute," snapped Bunter. Whiz! A boot sailed through the air, guided by Bunter's voice. Bang! Yoo-hoo! Bunter had not expected that. It took him quite by surprise when the boot banged on his ear and tipped him over. He plunged wildly in the dark, tipped off the edge of the bed, and bumped on the floor. "Oh! Oh, beast! Wow! Do you want the other one?" hissed Bolsover. "You better shut off that row if you don't." Luckily, the alarm sputtered to an end. Other fellows settled down to sleep, but Billy Bunter, being now out of bed, ceased to debate whether he should chuck it up and go to sleep again. Bolsover's boot had settled that point for him. He groped for his trousers in the faint glimmer of starlight from the high windows, heaved his fat legs into them, and tucked in his pyjamas. With the paint pot crammed into his trousers pocket and the flash lamp in his hand, the fat owl groped away to the dormitory door. He blinked out cautiously into the passage. The deep silence and stillness of the house seemed to indicate a later hour than 10. However, Bunter knew that he'd set the alarm for 10, so he had no doubts. He crept forth from the dormitory and tiptoed away down the passage to the landing. The staircase was a well of solid darkness. A chime came through the night from the Greyfriars clock tower, faint but clearly audible from the distance. It was followed by the striking of the hour. Boom! The fat owl started, stopped, and listened. Boom! Came a second time. As the fat owl had no doubt that it was 10 o'clock, he expected 8 more strokes to follow. But the rest was silence. Billy Bunter stood quite still. It dawned upon his fat brain that something must have gone wrong with that alarm clock. The deep darkness and dead silence of the house were explained now. It was not 10 o'clock at night. It was 2 o'clock in the morning. 2 o'clock in the morning was a very different proposition from 10 in the evening. A very unpleasant, eerie feeling came over Bunter. Instead of progressing towards the fourth form dormitory, he stood where he was, on the dark landing, hesitating. Creak! It was only a faint creak from the staircase, but a roll of thunder could not have startled Bunter more. He stood rooted, hardly breathing. Creak! All his vague terrors crystallized at that faint sound, for he knew what it was, what it could only be, the creak of ancient wood under a soft and stealthy footstep. Someone, unseen in the dark, was on the stairs. The fat owl's fat heart almost died within him. A beam of light flashed in the darkness and circled. The unseen man had turned on a flash lamp to get his bearings. The light moved round in a slow circle. A glimmer of it revealed the man who was holding it to Bunter's terrified eyes. He glimpsed a slight figure and a face with narrow, foxy eyes. And pimples! He could have fancied that he was dreaming, for it was a face he'd seen before, the face of the man who'd been captured a few days ago in number 7 study, the face of the man who'd been taken in charge of a constable to Courtfield police station, the foxy, pimpled face of the man Bunter and everyone else supposed to be safe under lock and key. Bunter could not stir. Terror chained him. The glimpse of that rascally face was brief, but he knew the man, knew that slim Judson was within 6 or 7 feet of him. The slowly circling light was approaching him, but he could not stir. It reached him. It flashed full on a fat, terrified face with open mouth and starting eyes. There was a startled gasp from the man with the light. "You!" Evidently he knew Bunter again, as Bunter knew him. The exclamation was followed by a swift movement towards the fat junior. A wild yelp of terror escaped Billy Bunter as he fled. His feet hardly touched the floor as he flew up the passage to the removed dormitory. Whether the man followed him or not, he did not know. He careered frantically into the dormitory, yelling at the top of his voice, "Help! Help! I say, you fellas! Burglars! You're help! Keep him off! Oh, crikey, crikey! Help!" Mr. Quelch sat up in bed. Something had awakened him suddenly. It seemed to him that there was a sound of distant yelling in the silence of the night. He fancied that the uproar came from the direction of the removed dormitory. An expression resembling that of the fabled Gorgon came over Mr. Quelch's face as he stepped out of bed and hurriedly grabbed up a dressing gown. The remove master stepped out and hurried across the dark landing, up the passage to the remove door. The door was wide open, and from within came a perfect babel of voices. Loudest of all were the dulcet tones of William George Bunter. I say, you fellows! It's that man! I say, he's after me! Help! Help! Is that Bunter? What's that fat idiot yelling about? Put a sock in it, Bunter. Shut up, you ass! You'll have Quelch here. The fat chump's been frightened of the dark. The frightfulness seems to be terrific. Hello! You're he's coming! Help! Shrieked Bunter. Undoubtedly there were footsteps in the passage, and Bunter did not guess that they were Quelch's. There was a sudden blaze of illumination in the removed dormitory as Mr. Quelch, in the doorway, turned the switch. Every eye turned on the doorway. And there was sudden silence as the grimly frowning face of the remove master was seen there. Only Bunter continued to yell, "He's coming! He's coming! I say, you fellas, keep him off! It's him! It's him!"
"Bunter!"
thundered Mr. Quelch.
"Silence, you stupid boy! What are you doing out of bed, Bunter, at this hour? Have you been out of your dormitory?"
"Oh, yes, yes!"
gasped Bunter. Bunter evidently was the cause of the uproar, and that he was frightened almost out of his fat wits was clear at a glance. He was fairly babbling with terror.
"You have been out of your dormitory, Bunter?"
"Oh, yes, I saw him, sir."
"You saw whom?"
snapped Mr. Quelch.
"Him, sir."
"Who, boy?"
almost shrieked Mr. Quelch.
That man, sir. Oh, cracky, the man who pocked old Popper's picket. I mean the man who popped old Pickett's pocker."
"Will you tell me who or what you fancy you have seen, Bunter?"
asked Mr. Quelch in a grinding voice.
I'm telling you, sir. It was that pack picket. I mean, that pickpocket. The man who got old Pippa's pocketbook. No, I mean his pocketbook. The man who was copped in my study, sir."
"Oh, my hat," murmured Bob Cherry. All the remove stared at Bunter. That the fat owl had been badly frightened in the dark, everyone could see, but that he'd encountered Mr. Judson within the walls of Greyfriars, no one was likely to believe.
"You utterly ridiculous boy," Mr. Quelch exclaimed. "The man you speak of is under lock and key at the police station. How dare you leave your dormitory at this hour? Why are you not in bed?"
"Because I got up, sir."
There was a chuckle from some of the beds. It was stilled immediately by a glare from the remove master.
"Bunter, you obtuse boy, if you do not explain at once why you left your dormitory," rumbled Mr. Quelch.
I thought it was 10 o'clock, sir,"
groaned Bunter.
The alarm clock went wrong, sir. I wasn't going to the fourth form dorm to Jape Temple, sir."
"You are going to another dormitory to play some foolish trick at this hour of the night?" hooted Mr. Quelch. "I shall punish you most severely for causing this disturbance, Bunter. You will come to my study after prayers in the morning, and I shall cane you."
"Oh, crikey!"
"Now go back to bed, and be quiet," said the remove master sternly.
"But, I say, sir, aren't you going to telephone the police? Suppose he's still in the house?"
"If you utter another word, Bunter, I shall send for my cane and chastise you on the spot."
Billy Bunter blinked at him. His terror of the pimply man lurking in the dark was great, but Quelch was a nearer danger. He did not utter another word. He plunged into bed. Mr. Quelch shut off the light, drew the door shut, and walked away. And Bunter's voice was not heard again till he was off the scene. Then it was heard.
I say, you fellows,
"You blithering, burbling, benighted bandersnatch," said Bob Cherry. "Shut up and go to sleep and let other fellows do the same."
"Think I can go to sleep with a burglar burgling about?"
howled Bunter. "Shut up!" howled a dozen fellows.
"Beasts!"
groaned Bunter. But he shut up at last. The remove settled down to sleep once more, and Bunter laid his fat head on his pillow, convinced that he would not be able to sleep a wink. But that was an error on Bunter's part. In less than 5 minutes, a sound resembling the murmur of distant thunder was rumbling through the remove dormitory. It was Billy Bunter's snore.
"Come in," said Mr. Quelch in his grimmest tone.
After prayers in the morning, Mr. Quelch had gone to his study. Cane in hand, with frowning brows, he stood ready for Bunter, as the door opened, and Inspector Grimes of Courtfield presented himself. Mr. Grimes started a little at the sight of the remove master's attitude. He was about to say good morning. Instead, he stared.
"Oh," said Mr. Quelch.
He'd taken it for granted that it was Bunter. The colour flushed into his cheeks, and he hurriedly dropped the cane on the table.
"Oh, good morning, Mr. Grimes. I was expecting, pray, come in, sit down."
Quelch fairly stammered. Mr. Grimes sat solidly down.
"I'm afraid, Mr. Quelch, that the recent occurrence here has caused a good deal of unusual disturbance," said Mr. Grimes apologetically. "It has, undoubtedly," said Mr. Quelch. "I'm sorry, sir, that the matter is not quite at an end," said Mr. Grimes. "The loss to Sir Hilton Popper, sir, is of course very serious. I understand that the Blue Mauritius stamp, now missing, is worth upwards of £2,000, and Sir Hilton has no doubt that it is to be found somewhere about the school." "Extremely improbable, in my opinion," said Mr. Quelch. "I will speak frankly to you, sir," said Mr. Grimes, "more frankly than I care to do to Sir Hilton. I am not absolutely assured that the stamp was in the pocket-book at all when it fell into the man Judson's hands. It was not found either in the pocket-book or on the man when he was searched, and from all the accounts I received, the man's flight was so hurried that he had no opportunity of removing it and concealing it, except during the few minutes he was out of observation in a schoolboy's study here. That study has been searched with meticulous care, and the stamp certainly is not there. Sir Hilton is positive on the point, but
Mr. Grimes coughed.
Sir Hilton is occasionally somewhat forgetful, Mr. Grimes,
said the remove-master acidly.
Although he has known me for many years, he has addressed me as Mr. Welch and even Mr. Squelch. A gentleman who cannot even recall a name—
Precisely so, sir, said Inspector Grimes. Sir Hilton is quite positive about it, but I cannot feel equally positive myself.
Nor I,
said Mr. Quelch. But, sir, it happens that the matter may be put to a test which may clear up doubt, continued the inspector. If the man Judson did actually find an opportunity of concealing the stamp while he was in the school, it can only have been in the hope of recovering it later, when he came out of prison.
No doubt. I presume that will not be for 6 months at least.
Once more the inspector coughed. I regret to tell you, sir, that it may be much sooner. In fact, the man escaped last night. He is now at large. Mr. Quelch gave a sudden start, as Bunter's strange story of the night before came back to his mind.
Bless my soul! You see, the man is at large?
He exclaimed. It is possible, sir, that he may lurk in the vicinity of this school, if in fact he did conceal the stamp here to make some attempt to recover it. Many of the boys of your form, Mr. Quelch, came into contact with the man, and would know him again at once if they saw him. If he should be seen anywhere about the school, it will indicate beyond doubt that the stamp is indeed here, and that he hopes to lay hands on it.
Bless my soul, repeated Mr. Quelch. It is possible that that stupid boy was stating the facts. I'd no idea, of course, that the man was at large, and when Bunter stated that he'd seen him—
Mr. Grimes gave quite a little jump. He's been seen? He exclaimed.
A foolish boy named Bunter left his dormitory at a late hour last night. He stated that he'd seen the man Judson on the dormitory landing, a statement which I attributed to terrified fancy. But in view of what you now tell me, it is possible.
I must see the boy, sir, exclaimed Mr. Grimes. Tap.
That, I think, is the boy in question, said Mr. Quelch,
as a tap came at the study door, and he rapped out,
Come in.
The door opened. A fat figure, a fat, dolorous face, and a big pair of spectacles were revealed.
Come in, Bunter,
rapped Mr. Quelch. Billy Bunter rolled reluctantly in.
Bunter,
said Mr. Quelch.
Yes, sir,
groaned Bunter.
Mr. Grimes desires to ask you some questions. You will tell him exactly what happened last night when you were out of your dormitory.
Yes, sir. I really did see that man, sir. He had a light, and he turned it on, and I saw his face, sir, and it was that pockpicket. I mean that pickpocket who popped Sir Hilton's picket, sir.
Mr. Grimes turned to the remove-master. There can be no doubt now, sir. The man was here, and he can have been here with only one object. Mr. Quelch nodded.
Indeed, it would certainly appear so. If the man was here, he could have had but one motive, to recover Sir Hilton's stamp.
Exactly. The information Master Bunter has been able to give clears up the doubt on the point, and is indeed extremely useful, said Mr. Grimes. Mr. Grimes had a kindly heart. He was tactfully putting in a word for the unfortunate fat owl. Mr. Quelch gave him rather a sharp look, and then gave Bunter a grim one. There was a moment's silence, and then he said,
You may leave my study, Bunter.
Yes, sir,
gasped Bunter. A split second was sufficient to see Bunter out of the study. Mr. Grimes rose. The matter is now clear, sir. The man Judson was here within a few hours of escaping from his cell. He lost no time. The Blue Mauritius stamp, sir, was his object, and it must now be taken as a fact that he succeeded in concealing it somewhere in the school.
It would seem so, said Mr. Quelch. I conclude, sir, that measures will be taken to keep watch for the man in case he should make another attempt to enter these premises.
Oh, you may be assured of that, sir. And the inspector took his leave. Squiff of the Remove stared. Squiff, at the moment, was perched on a high branch in a massive old beech tree that shaded the stile in Friardale Lane. From that point of vantage, Squiff had a view of the footpath and the stile below, and of Friardale Lane winding away towards Greyfriars. And in the lane he had also a view of a fat figure rolling along from the direction of the school towards the stile. The view of Billy Bunter did not particularly interest Squiff. But a few moments later, he was interested. Another figure came in sight, at a little distance behind Bunter. It was that of a short man with a beaky nose. The man's eyes were fixed on Bunter's podgy back with such a furtive, stealthy expression that the Australian junior in the branches of the beech could not help noticing it. Squiff stared. It leapt to the eye that the man with the beaky nose was following Bunter, not merely walking in the same direction, but deliberately following him, and keeping always at the same distance behind him, which was remarkable and drew Squiff's special attention. As he scanned the hard, narrow, beaky face, he remembered that he'd seen the man before, hanging about the school gates. The beaky man had been there when Squiff had come out more than an hour ago. Had it been Lord Mauleverer, or the Bounder, or Temple of the Forth, or Monty Newland, or any such wealthy fellow, Squiff would have wondered whether the beaky man was a pickpocket, following a Greyfriars fellow to a lonely spot with the intention of relieving him of his cash. But the most enterprising pickpocket could hardly have chosen Billy Bunter for a victim. Billy Bunter did not look wealthy. He was hardly worth the while of any professional snapper-up of unconsidered trifles, yet undoubtedly it did look like it. Bunter, equally unconscious of the Australian junior in the branches of the beech and of the beaky man shadowing him, rolled on towards the stile. It was Saturday afternoon, a half-holiday at Greyfriars, and Bunter was rolling over to Cliff House to see his sister Bessie, perhaps with a faint hope that something might yet survive from Wednesday's hamper. The fat owl arrived at the stile at length. He leaned on it to get his breath, always in short supply with William George Bunter. Squiff, from above, watched the beaky man curiously. No doubt he could see that Bunter was about to take the footpath through the wood, which, if his purpose was robbery, suited him admirably. Squiff's face set grimly. A pickpocket or footpad who set out to pilfer from Billy Bunter was simply wasting his time. If Billy Bunter had any cash about him, it was not likely to amount to much. True, he had a watch and chain, and the beaky man couldn't know that the value thereof was what Fisher T. Fish described as nicks. But he was not going to help himself even to Bunter's rolled gold watch if Squiff could stop him, and he had no doubt that he could. Bunter clambered over the stile at last, and dropped with a grunt on the inner side. At the same moment, the man in the lane got into motion. He shot forward and reached the stile. Bunter was not 6 feet from it when the beaky man leapt lightly over. Then he ran at Bunter and caught the fat owl by a fat shoulder. Billy Bunter spun round with a startled squeak. I say, what, who? Stuttered the fat owl. I say, you let go! Oh, what do you want? What? The beaky man did not trouble to speak. Grasping Bunter's fat shoulder with his left hand, he snatched at the watch with his right. There was a brassy gleam as Bunter's watch came out of his pocket, and a snap as the chain parted. Bunter gave a yell. Oh, crikey, you give me my watch! Why, you beast, you ain't gonna pinch my watch! Help! Yahoo! With a swing of his arm, the beaky man sent Bunter spinning. It was at that moment that Squiff, on the branch above, went into action. He swung with his hands and dropped fairly on the man below. Crash! A thunderbolt dropping from a clear sky could not have taken the beaky man more by surprise. Squiff landed on the beaky man's shoulders, fairly crumpling him up. He pitched into the grass, Bunter's watch flying from his hand and landing 2 or 3 yards away, his beaky face buried in grass roots. Squiff dropped on his knees, on the sprawling back, pinning him down. "Oh!" came an anguished gurgle from the beaky man. He wriggled like an eel under Squiff's sinewy knees, gasping and twisting his head round to stare up at his unexpected assailant. Squiff gave him a cheery grin. "Knocked you sideways, what?" he asked pleasantly.
Oh, get off my back!"
The man struggled fiercely,
but he could not dislodge the knee that pinned him down.
Squiff had him down and kept him there. Billy Bunter sat up, spluttering. Oh, is that you, Squiff? I never saw you." "Neither did this Johnny," chuckled Squiff. I say, he's got my watch," gasped Bunter. He heaved himself to his feet. "There it is, fathead, where he dropped it," said Squiff. He pointed to a brassy glimmer in the grass, and the fat owl pounced on the watch. Fisher T-Fish might pronounce its value to be nix, but Billy Bunter was very glad to recover his gold watch. A poor thing, but his own, as it were. "I say, that beast's broken the chain," said Bunter. "Snatching a fellow's gold watch, you know. It's worth pounds and pounds, Field." "Well, you got your watch," said Squiff. He jammed a powerful knee a little more firmly into a wriggling back. "I'll look after this rat while you clear off, Bunter, but I can't kneel on him forever. Hook it." Bunter slipped the precious watch back into his pocket. But he did not hook it. He eyed the wriggling pickpocket dubiously. I say, suppose he gets after me again, in the wood."
"Will you get off my back?"
came in tones of fury from the beaky man, heaving under Squiff's pinning knee like the stormy ocean. 5 minutes start, old fat man." Billy Bunter gave the wriggling man another dubious blink. Then he started. This time he did not proceed with his usual leisurely roll. Bunter started at a run, and in a few moments disappeared from view up the leafy path. Squiff rocked as the man under him made a tremendous effort. Evidently it was not the beaky man's view that Bunter's big gold watch was a thing of little value, for as the fat owl disappeared up the path, he exerted every ounce of his strength to throw the Australian junior off, obviously with the intention of getting after Bunter if he could. Squiff, strong and muscular as he was, had hard work to hold him down. For a long minute the man strove fiercely and savagely. Then, quite spent with his efforts, he collapsed in the grass and lay panting and gasping, almost groaning for breath. After that it was easy enough to hold him, and Squiff kept him pinned till a good 5 minutes had elapsed. Then he removed his knee and rose to his feet. The beaky man staggered up, panting, his eyes smouldering at the Greyfriars Junior. Squiff, standing between him and the way Bunter had gone, watched him coolly, quite ready for more trouble if the rascal wanted it. For a moment or two, it seemed that the man would spring at him, but he seemed to think better of it. He gave the Australian junior a black scowl and made a movement to pass on up the footpath. Squiff stood like a rock in the way. "You're not going after Bunter," said Squiff. "Hop over that stile and clear off." The beaky man eyed him almost wolfishly, but no doubt he realized that the fat owl was at a safe distance by that time, and that a scrap with the sturdy Australian junior would not serve any useful purpose. He swung himself over the stile and slouched away in the direction of Friardale. "Hello, hello, hello! Grimy again!" Bob Cherry made that remark in break on Tuesday morning, and the famous five glanced at a solid, stolid figure that came in at the school gates. Inspector Grimes of Courtfield had become quite a familiar figure at the school of late. And here he was again, on the track the chums of the Remove had no doubt of that elusive Blue Mauritius stamp. That the Blue Mauritius was somewhere about Greyfriars, few now doubted, but spotting it was quite another matter. "Grimy is a sticker," remarked Johnny Bull, as the inspector from Courtfield walked across to the house. "Pimples knows where it is, I suppose," said Bob, "but they've let Pimples slip through their fingers. It seems that fat-ass Bunter did really run into him on the dormitory landing." "That's queer, too," said Harry Wharton thoughtfully. "What the dickens was the man doing up in the dormitories? He was cornered in the Remove studies, and never went up the upper staircase at all, so he can't have hidden the stamp up there." "Hardly," said Nugent. "I dare say he'd pick up anything that came handy while he was on the spot, but there's nothing up in the dormitories." "Except Bunter's gold watch," grinned Bob.
Ha, 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 ha. Yeah, I say, you fellows.
Billy Bunter rolled up.
I say, old Grimey's here again. He's just gone into Quelch. I shouldn't wonder if he wants to see me. Old Grimey isn't very bright, and a fellow with brains might be jolly useful. It was me who spotted that pimply beast the other night, when you fellows were snoring in bed.
At which the famous five chuckled again. It did not seem probable to them that the Courtfield inspector wanted to see Bunter, or had any use for his brain work. But a surprise was coming. It came in the shape of Trotter, the house page, who emerged from the house, glanced round, and then came across to the group of juniors.
"Oh, Master Bunter," said Trotter. "Oh, if you please, sir, Inspector Grimes would like to see you in Mr. Quelch's study, sir."
Billy Bunter grinned so widely that his fat grin extended almost from ear to ear. And Bunter, greatly bucked, rolled off to the house in high feather, leaving 5 astonished juniors staring. But Trotter's mission was not yet finished. He went further afield to apprise Peter Todd that he also was required. Then he looked for Tom Dutton to give him the same information, from which it appeared that Inspector Grimes desired to see all the inhabitants of number 7 study in the remove. Billy Bunter, at the door of Mr. Quelch's study, blinked round, surprised and not pleased to see his study mates coming up the passage. Peter Todd tapped at the study door and opened it, and the 3 inhabitants of number 7 in the remove entered Mr. Quelch's study together. Inspector Grimes was standing by the window. His ruddy face turned towards the 3 juniors as they entered, and he gave them a genial nod.
Here are the boys, Mr. Grimes, Mr. Quelch said. Todd, Dutton, Bunter. Inspector Grimes wishes to speak to you. You will tell him anything you can.
"Yes, sir," said Peter and Bunter. Tom Dutton looked puzzled. "Did you say can, sir?" he asked.
"Certainly,"
rapped Mr. Quelch. "What can, sir? Do you mean a water can?"
"Oh, bless my soul. Inspector Grimes, I should explain that this boy, Dutton, is somewhat deaf and liable to mistake what is said to him."
And with that, Mr. Quelch quitted the study without explaining to Dutton whether he had meant a water can or not. Mr. Grimes smiled faintly. He proceeded stolidly with the business in hand. "Now, you 3 boys belong to the study in which the pickpocket Judson was captured last week?" asked Mr. Grimes. "Yes, sir," said Peter.
"Yeah, I was there, Mr. Grimes," said Billy Bunter. "Toddy and Dutton were out. They don't know anything about—"
"I think you were one of the boys on bicycles who joined in the chase of the pickpocket, Master Todd," said Mr. Grimes, apparently not hearing Bunter. "Yes, sir. We were after him when he dodged in at the gates."
"Yeah, I found him in the study," recommenced Bunter. "If there's anything you want to know about that, Mr. Grimes—"
"From the various accounts I have received," said Mr. Grimes, still deaf to Bunter, "the man was hotly chased and hardly out of sight for a moment until he hid in that study. It appears to be certain, as doubtless you know, that he removed a valuable rare stamp from Sir Hilton Popper's pocketbook while it was in his possession."
"And we know all about the Blue Mauritius, sir,"
said Bunter. "Now, listen to me carefully," said Mr. Grimes. Bunter wondered whether the inspector had become as deaf as Tom Dutton. He didn't seem to hear the fat owl at all. "It appears that the man removed the stamp from the pocketbook and concealed it, apparently in the hope of finding an opportunity of recovering it later. From all appearance, he can have concealed it only in the study in which he was out of sight for a few minutes."
"Oh, it ain't there, Mr. Grimes," said Bunter.
"I've looked. The study has been searched with such thoroughness that we are satisfied that it is no longer there," went on Mr. Grimes. "That is why I desire to question you boys as belonging to the study."
"Yeah, I've looked everywhere,"
Bunter restarted. "On Friday night," resumed the inspector, still ruthlessly regardless of Bunter, "the man is known to have entered this building at a late hour."
"I saw him, sir. It was me."
"On that occasion, the man was seen on an upper landing, a flight of stairs above the removed studies. Now, he could easily have entered the study undetected, but he had some reason for going up to the dormitory floor instead. This would seem to indicate that he had some cause to think that the hidden stamp, though undiscovered, might have been transferred from the study to a dormitory." Peter Todd gave a quick nod as he saw the inspector's point. Billy Bunter blinked at him through his big spectacles, wondering what on earth the old ass was driving at. Tom Dutton gave no sign. He had not heard a word so far.
"You see what I mean, Master Todd," went on the inspector. "The stamp may have been hidden in something such as the pocket of a blazer hanging on the door, or some other garment that may have been left about the study, and that may have been removed by the owner before the search was made for the stamp."
"I get you, sir," assented Peter. "Oh," said Bunter. The fat owl understood now what the old ass was driving at. "Oh, yes, I see. I wonder you didn't think of that before, Mr. Grimes." Inspector Grimes breathed rather hard for a moment, but he did not yield to his natural impulse to box Bunter's fat ears.
"Now, I want you boys to make an effort to recall that afternoon. Now, you seem a very intelligent boy, Master Todd, and I've no doubt you will remember whether you removed anything from that study, any article whatsoever, after the man Judson had been there, and before the study was searched for the stamp."
Peter Todd wrinkled his brow, but he had to shake his head. "Nothing at all, sir," he said. "Bunter may have. He's always leaving things lying about."
"Oh, really, Toddy?"
No, Master Bunter." Mr. Grimes took cognizance of the fat owl's existence at last.
"Master Bunter, can you remember whether you removed anything from your study after the man Judson had been there?"
"Oh, yes, sir,"
answered Bunter cheerfully.
"What was it?"
"My lines, sir."
"Your lines?" repeated Mr. Grimes.
"Yes, I had lines for my form master," explained Bunter. "Quelch wouldn't let me go out till they were done, so I couldn't go over and see my sister Bessie at Cliff House. She had a hamper."
"Keep to the point, Master Bunter."
"Why, that is the point, sir. I had to stick in the study and do my lines, and I did them after that man Judson was there, and I took them down to Quelch."
Mr. Grimes breathed hard again.
"The stamp can hardly have been concealed in your lines, Master Bunter, if you did them after the man was gone. Did you take anything else from the study before the search was made? A jacket, a blazer, a cap, a book, even a handkerchief?"
"Oh, no, sir. Only my lines."
Inspector Grimes turned to Tom Dutton, his last hope.
"Now, Master Dutton."
"Did you speak to me, sir?" asked Tom.
Yes."
Inspector Grimes remembered what Mr. Quelch had told him, and put on steam a little.
"Do you remember removing anything from your study last Wednesday afternoon?"
"I don't think so, sir. It was quite a fine afternoon. I was out on my bike and never noticed that it was muddy at all."
"I was speaking of your study. Do you remember last Wednesday afternoon?" bawled Mr. Grimes.
"Oh, yes, sir. That was the day that pickpocket dodged into the school. They found him in my study."
"Somewhere in that study he's known to have concealed a stamp."
"I shouldn't wonder, sir. All the fellows said he was a pickpocket, but he may have been a tramp, too."
"I said stamp," roared Inspector Grimes.
"Eh?" Tom Dutton looked bewildered. "Did you say stamp?" Mr. Grimes put on full steam and roared,
"A stamp! A rare stamp was concealed in your study."
"Oh, yes, I've heard about that, sir. There's no need to shout at a fellow. I'm not deaf."
"The stamp may have been hidden in some article removed from the study before the search was made by the police. Did you remove any such article?" bawled Mr. Grimes.
"Oh, no."
"Such a thing as a book, or a cap, or a blazer?"
"No, I don't use an ink eraser. If I did, I shouldn't take it out of the study. I should want it there."
I think that will do," gasped Inspector Grimes. "You may go. If you should learn, Master Todd, that any article was removed from your study at the material time, you will inform your form master, who will communicate with me."
"Certainly, sir," said Peter. The three juniors left Inspector Grimes with a knitted, thoughtful brow. He might have been enlightened had Billy Bunter remembered that his gold watch had been left lying on the study table during Mr. Judson's brief sojourn there. But that trifling circumstance had not lingered in Bunter's memory. It was a puzzled, perplexed, and somewhat irritated police inspector who watched the three juniors leave the study, little dreaming that one of them was carrying away with him the precious Blue Mauritius of which he was in search.
I say, Harry, old chap.
How much? Asked Harry Wharton resignedly. Billy Bunter blinked at him.
Oh, really, Wharton? It's Wednesday, you know.
I had an idea that it was, as it was Tuesday yesterday, assented Wharton. Did you work that out in your head?
No, I mean it's a half this afternoon, you silly ass, howled Bunter. And Bessie's got tickets for the circus at Courtfield. I've got to meet her in Courtfield at 3:15. I shall want to know the time, you know. Bessie won't wait for me if I'm late. My watch has stopped.
Well, why not wind it up?
I keep on winding and it doesn't make any difference, explained Bunter. The beastly winder goes round and round and round, but the watch doesn't go. Oh, it's a jolly good watch, you know.
Oh, must be, agreed Wharton.
No, it's a jolly expensive watch, 35-carat gold.
Oh, my hat.
But it doesn't keep time at present. I'm going to have it repaired when I get a postal order I'm expecting. Will you lend me your watch for today?
Oh.
No, only for today, you know, said Bunter. I've just got to keep time this afternoon, or Bessie will hike off without me. I know it's only a paltry cheap watch you've got, old chap.
Eh?
Nothing to look at compared with my splendid gold watch. But it does keep time, doesn't it? Lend it to me, will you?
You put it so nicely, said Harry. Oh, yes, if you like. Mind, if you lose it or break the glass or anything else, I'll burst you afterwards. The captain of the Remove detached the watch, and Billy Bunter, with a disparaging blink, slipped it into his waistcoat pocket. Bunter rolled up to his study to deposit in the table drawer his own imposing gold watch, which, magnificent as it was, in Bunter's estimation at least, was useless for the purpose of keeping an appointment on time. That worry off his fat mind, another took its place when the bell rang for third school. Bunter could not help feeling a little uneasy about his con. He had spent prep the previous evening in the armchair in No. 7 study, chancing it with Quelch once more. Now he rather wished he hadn't chanced it. Quelch might not call on him to construe, but again he might. And if the fat owl handed out howlers, it was quite on the cards that Quelch might give him extra school, which would wholly, completely, and totally dish the circus at Courtfield that afternoon. Quite unaware of that worry on the fat mind of the fattest member of his form, Mr. Quelch did not even glance at the owl of the Remove. Wharton, Nugent, Johnny Bull, Bob Cherry were called on in turn. And then...
Bunter?
Oh, crikey!
Billy Bunter blinked at his book.
Construe,
snapped Mr. Quelch. There was nothing for it but to make a shot at it. Billy Bunter was about to make a shot which would have missed the mark by a very wide margin, when a tap came at the form room door. Tap. The form room door opened, and Trotter appeared.
"Oh, if you please, sir, a servant from Popper Court with a message for Master Bunter from Sir Hilton, sir."
Mr. Quelch compressed his lips. He did not like interruptions in lesson time. However, Sir Hilton was a member of the governing board of Greyfriars School and not to be disregarded.
"Oh, very well," snapped Mr. Quelch. "You may go to the visitors' room, Bunter, to receive the message from Sir Hilton Popper."
"Yes, sir,"
trilled Bunter, and he rolled joyously out of the Remove form room. The man standing by the window in the visitors' room looked a respectable manservant. There were at least 6 or 7 men-servants at Popper Court, and this, so far as Bunter knew, was one of them. Not for a moment did William George Bunter dream that he was about to have the surprise of his fat life. "Master Bunter, sir?" he asked deferentially.
"Oh, yes."
Bunter gave him a patronizing blink.
"Trotter says you've got a message for me from Sir Hilton Popper."
"Precisely, sir. Oh, this note is for you, sir," said the sleek man.
He came deferentially towards Bunter, taking an envelope from his pocket. Bunter held out a fat, grubby paw for it. What happened next seemed to Billy Bunter like a fantastic vision from some extraordinary nightmare. The sleek man, as he drew nearer, did not place the note in the fat hand. Instead of doing that, he made a sudden snatch, and the watch whisked out of Bunter's waistcoat pocket in his hand. With the watch in his right hand, he gave Bunter a violent shove with his left, sending the fat junior sprawling on his plump back on the floor. There was a heavy bump as Bunter landed. Utterly amazed and dazed, the fat junior sprawled on his back, gasping. The sleek man did not even waste a glance on him. Leaving Bunter sprawling, he thrust the watch into his pocket and ran to the window. Bunter's dizzy blink glimpsed him jumping out into the quad. Almost in the twinkling of an eye, he was gone. Gurgled Bunter. His fat brain was in a whirl. A manservant from Popper Court with a message from Sir Hilton, pinching a fellow's watch and knocking him over. It was amazing, astounding, stupefying. The fat owl staggered to his feet, spluttering for breath. He tottered out of the room at last, and made his way breathlessly back to the form room. Monty Newland was on con when Bunter rolled gasping in. He was interrupted. I say, sir, spluttered Bunter in wild excitement. All eyes turned on his fat, excited face.
You need not speak, Bunter,
rapped Mr. Quelch.
But, sir,
You may go to your place, Bunter.
But I've had my picker pocked, gasped Bunter. No, I mean my pocker packed. I mean my pocket picked.
Even Quelch forgot construe at that startling statement.
What did you say, Bunter?
He rumbled.
That man, sir, that man from Popper Court, he pinched my watch, sir, and knocked me over and bolted with it,
stuttered Bunter. Every man in the form stared at the fat owl.
Bunter, what do you mean? Explain yourself at once.
He's got the watch. Wharton's watch. Wharton lent it to me because mine doesn't go, and he's got it.
Impossible.
He did, sir. He snatched the watch and biffed me and wumped out of the gindo.
What?
I mean, jumped out of the window.
The remove listened in sheer amazement. Quelch listened, quite as astonished as his form.
Upon my word. Extraordinary. The man cannot have come from Popper Court. A pretext to obtain admission. I shall notify the police at once. Wharton, I shall leave you in charge of the form for a few minutes.
Yes, sir. Quelch, convinced at last that the almost impossible happening had happened, hurried from the form room to get on the telephone to Courtfield Police Station. There was an excited buzz in the form room as the door closed after him.
Yeah, I say, Wharton, wasn't it jolly lucky I had your watch on, and not my splendid gold watch?
Ha, 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 ha! Frightfully lucky, you fat idiot, said Harry Wharton. I told you I'd burst you if you lost my watch.
Well, I couldn't help that man pinching it, could I? Who'd have thought it, you know?
Well, it seems to have happened, said Bob Cherry, but I'm blessed if I can make it out. Can anybody? Nobody could. How the man even knew Bunter's name was a mystery. Nobody was likely to guess that a man with a beaky nose who had snatched Bunter's watch at the stile in Friardale Lane on Saturday afternoon and had heard Squiff address the fat junior by name had passed the information on to a friend in the same line of business. The whole episode was astonishing and almost incredible, but it had happened. Bessie Bunter, whose ample proportions and big spectacles gave her a remarkable resemblance to her brother William George, set off to walk to the Courtfield Road to meet him at 2:45. It was extremely irritating for the weather to turn rainy on a half-holiday, when she had to cover the distance to Courtfield and her umbrella had been left behind, as it was broken in 3 places. The rain was coming down quite hard by the time she reached the stile that gave access to the footpath through the wood. It would be all right when she reached the bus stop on the high road, but that was at a considerable distance. One of the winding footpaths in Friardale Wood led to it, but the falling rain and dripping branches did not look inviting. On the other hand, Miss Bunter had tickets for the circus, and they were available only for that afternoon. Billy, too, would be waiting for her at the corner of the marketplace in Courtfield. Billy, it was true, could wait, but she did not want to waste the circus tickets. So, clambering over the stile, she pushed on. 10 minutes later, in the middle of a drenching, dripping wood, she rather wished that she'd turned back after all. It was a regular downpour now. Bessie realized that she had to make for shelter, and she headed for the old woodcutter's hut. Bessie was very glad to reach it. The hut had 3 walls and a slanting roof. The interior was more than half full of piled logs and was dusky and shadowy. The fat junior of Cliff House threaded her way through the stacked logs to the furthest extremity of the hut and sat down on a dry log there. Pat, 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 patter came the rain on the roof. For a good half hour it went on, Miss Bunter's feelings growing deeper and deeper as she listened to it. But at long last, it slackened. The pat, pat, patter grew lighter. Bessie began to think of venturing forth again. She was still thinking of it when a footstep splashed in a puddle in front of the hut, and a surly voice reached her ears.
"Caw, what weather? Strike me pink."
"It's leaving off now we got here," said another voice. Bessie Bunter gave a little jump. Then she sat very still. Tramps was the terrifying thought that flashed into her fat mind. Bessie hardly breathed. She could hear 2 men pushing into the hut. They remained near the entrance. A smell of tobacco penetrated to her. They had lighted cigarettes. "Shiny don't seem to be coming yet. 2:30 was the time, and it's past that now. Think he's got it?"
"I shouldn't wonder. After all, it's easy. That fat cove don't know a thing about it. It's still where I put it. We should have heard if it had been found."
"Caw, that fat covey's watch is worth something."
"You was a fool to lose it Saturday, Beaky, after getting your hands on it. You couldn't show up after being seen no more than I could, and we had to let Shiny in on it. That makes 3 for the divvy."
"There's enough to go round, Slim."
"Yes, if he's got it."
Slim gave a grunt.
"If he ain't, I shall have to try it on again at the school."
Every word came clearly to the plump schoolgirl behind the stacks of logs. That Beaky and Slim were discussing some robbery she could not fail to be aware. They were thieves. "Here he is, Slim!" came a sudden exclamation. Bessie heard a sound of tramping feet in puddles. A third man had joined the 2, lounging in the entrance of the woodcutter's hut. A man, if Bessie could have seen him, with the look of a respectable manservant.
"Got it?"
"I got it all right, Slim. But what?" "There's nothing in it. It's the fat covey's watch, all right. He was wearing it, but there's nothing in it. Look."
"Strike me pink and blue, that ain't the watch!"
Slim's voice was almost a yell.
"I tell you, it's the one he had on, and I snatched it, and—"
"Oh, first Beaky lets a schoolboy scare him off it, and then you goes and pinches the wrong watch. Caw!"
Slim's voice thrilled with anger and indignation.
"I tell you, this was the watch he had on," persisted Shiny.
"Then he must have changed it. Look at this, HW engraved on the back. He must have borrowed it. It tain't his watch."
Slim almost wailed.
"We've got to get after that fat covey Bunter and get that watch off him. And we got to do it quick afore he happens to open it. Caw!"
There was a shuffling of feet in wet grass and puddles. The 3 rascals who'd met at the solitary woodcutter's hut were going, much to Bessie Bunter's relief. The last word she heard had made Bessie almost forget her terrors in her astonishment. She didn't need telling who the fat covey named Bunter was. These 3 rascals, Slim, Beaky, and Shiny, were after Brother Billy's watch. Why was a mystery that a more powerful brain than Bessie's might have failed to fathom. She knew that watch, and that its actual value was precisely as appraised by Fisher T. Fish. Nix. Yet these 3 lurkers of the underworld wanted that watch, and wanted it bad.
"I say, Frankie, old fellow."
Frank Nugent grinned. "No," he answered, without waiting for Bunter to continue.
"Beast? I say, Bull."
"No," said Johnny Bull.
"Yeah! Inky, old chap."
"The answer is in the esteemed negative," grinned Hurry Jamset Ram Singh.
"I say, Bob."
"Bow wow," said Bob Cherry. Harry Wharton laughed. Billy Bunter did not address him alone among the members of the famous co. He was, at the moment, of no use to Bunter. Bunter had already had his watch. They were in the rag, looking out at a quad shining with rain. Bunter really should have started for Courtfield before this, but he was not likely to start in a heavy downpour of rain. Now, at last, it was stopping, and Bunter was prepared to get a move on. But owing to the strange and startling occurrence in the visitors' room that morning, the fat owl was still in want of a watch. Watches were made to go, and Harry Wharton's had gone.
"Toddy, old chap."
"Watches ain't safe with you, old fat man," said Peter, shaking his head.
"Well, there ain't likely to be another pickpocket about," argued Bunter. "I simply must know the time this afternoon. If I miss Bessie and don't get to the circus, it'll be your fault. Blessed if I ever came across such a selfish lot."
The fat owl turned to roll doorward. Peter Todd glanced after him, hesitated, gave an expressive grunt, and called out, "Here you are, fathead."
"Oh!"
Bunter revolved on his axis, blinked at the watch Peter was holding out to him, and grabbed it. Undoubtedly it was not an expensive watch. He gave a sniff as he put it into his waistcoat pocket, thereby expressing his opinion of the watch and his grateful appreciation of the loan. "Mind you don't lose it," said Peter.
"Blessed if I see if that would matter very much if I did,"
said Bunter, agreeably. With that gracious and grateful remark, Billy Bunter rolled out of the rag with Peter's Waterbury in his pocket. Sunshine followed the rain, and the crowd of juniors in the rag were glad to stream out into the quad. Billy Bunter was rolling cheerfully down to the gates. He did not observe a man loitering on the other side of the road as he rolled out. Had he observed him, he would not have recognized him as the sleek man who had called at the school that morning, for Shiny now had an artificial moustache gummed to his upper lip and a cap pulled low over his forehead. But if Bunter was not interested in the loiterer undoubtedly was interested in Bunter. His eyes snapped at the sight of the fat junior coming out at the school gates. Having seen Billy Bunter roll out at the gates, Harry Wharton and co. supposed they'd seen the last of him for the afternoon. But that was quite an error. Hardly 2 or 3 minutes had elapsed since Billy Bunter had rolled out of view when he came into view again, bolting in at the gates at top speed, his little round eyes almost bulging through his big round spectacles, and yelling at the top of his voice, I say, you fellas, I've been robbed. My picket's been popped. What is Todge? I mean, Toddy's watch. Oh, crikey. I say, he snatched it. Oh, crumbs. "Who's got it?" yelled Bob Cherry.
That man, he rushed at me in the road and snatched it. I say, fellas, he snatched it and pushed me over, just like that beast this morning."
Billy Bunter babbled breathlessly and incoherently. "Come on," exclaimed Harry Wharton. He ran for the gates with his comrades at his heels. They came out of the gates into the road in a breathless crowd, but there was no man to be seen. Shiny, with a snatched watch in his pocket, was already heading for the open spaces, and he was well out of sight. "Gone," said Bob Cherry. "And he's got my watch," gasped Peter. "Why, that fat villain hadn't had it more than 10 minutes, and it's gone. My watch." "This beats the band," said Vernon Smith. "Why is somebody after Bunter's watch specially? This is the 3rd go." "Goodness knows."
I say, you fellows,"
Bunter rolled out.
"I say, have you got him?"
"No, ass, he's gone." "With my watch," roared Peter.
"You fat ass." "Oh, really, Toddy? I can't help pot-pickers packing pickets, can I? I mean, pockets. And he wasn't worth much, was it, old chap?"
"You fat, frabjous, footling fathead."
"Well, I think you might be a bit sympathetic, Toddy, when a fellow's been pushed over. But I say, you fellows,"
Bunter remembered the circus.
"I've got to get off. I say, who's going to lend me a watch?"
"Oh, my hat," gasped Bob Cherry. "Who's going to lend Bunter another watch to be pinched? Don't all speak at once." "Ha, ha, 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 ha." They all laughed. Nobody, it appeared, was going to lend Bunter another watch. So the fat owl rolled away for the bus, watchless, and at least safe from pickpockets. And by good luck, he found Miss Elizabeth Bunter in the marketplace. So the loss of Peter Todd's watch really didn't matter, after all. And while Brother Billy and Sister Bessie were rolling into the circus at Courtfield, 3 men, one with pimples, one with a beaky nose, and one with a sleek, smooth face, in a secluded spot in Friardale Wood, were gazing with an expressive gaze at a Waterbury watch, the second wrong watch that had fallen into their hands.
I say, you fellows.
Oh, blow away, Bunter.
Oh, really, Wharton?
It was quite a party in number 1 study in the remove. The famous 5 were all there, and Smithy, and Tom Redwing, and Peter Todd, and Squiff. Number 1 study was fairly roomy, but 9 fellows filled it almost to capacity. And nobody present seemed to think there was room for a 10th, especially one who was double width. Billy Bunter, as he blinked into that study through his big spectacles, could not, by the widest stretch of his fat imagination, have fancied that he was persona grata there. But he did not blow away.
I say, you fellows, squeaked Bunter, I've got something to tell you.
Oh, go and tell somebody else.
Beast! I say, Bessie told me something. Yeah, I say, I wish you'd let a fellow speak, howled Bunter. It's about my watch.
Bother your watch. Blow away. You better go down and see Quelch, Bunter, said Harry Wharton. He wants to see you.
Blow, Quelch.
I've reported to him about Toddy's watch going.
Blow Toddy's watch.
Grimey's coming over about it.
Oh, blow Grimey.
He won't go till he's fed, said Squiff. Give him a bun and roll him out.
Beast! I hadn't had tea,
said Bunter.
It was too late for the scrum in hall when I got back from the circus. You've got a spread here. I think you might ask a fellow to join up after all I've done for you. I say, you fellows, I'm going to ask you all to a topping spread tomorrow. I'm expecting a lot of money tomorrow. I'm going to sell my gold watch, said Bunter impressively.
Ha, 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 ha.
Oh, you can cackle. Fishy wouldn't give me anything for that gold watch when I asked him last Wednesday. I'm jolly glad now that he wouldn't. Of course, I always knew it was jolly valuable, 44-carat gold and all that. But now that I know that a gang of crooks are after it...
A witch? A whatter? Bunter seemed to have interested the tea party in number 1 study at last. They all gazed at him as he made that startling statement.
A gang of crooks, said Bunter. Bessie heard them, and she told me at the circus. You see, she got into old Joyce's woodshed out of the rain, and they met there, and she heard them. There were 3 of them, she said, talking about my watch. 3 crooks, or gangsters. They're after my 56-carat gold watch.
And Bunter gasped for breath.
Oh, my hat. I can tell you she was jolly scared. 3 of them. And one was that man with the pimples because she heard the others call one of them Slim. And you know that pimply beast was called Slim Judson? And she said the others were called Beaky and Shiny. And I expect one of them was that beast with a beaky nose who tried to pinch my watch on Saturday when Squiff jumped on him. And the other's the beast who came here this morning, I expect, making out that he had a message from old Popper. And he hadn't all the time. And...
Again, Bunter paused for breath. Harry Wharton and co. gazed at him. Now that Billy Bunter was able to get his story out, it was coming out with a rush, and they were interested at last, and considerably astonished.
They're after my watch, said Bunter, and it must be awfully valuable for a gang of crooks to get after it. I mean to say, they've got hold of Wharton's watch and Toddy's watch, but it's my watch they want, my splendid gold watch, you know.
My only blue bonnet, said Bob Cherry. Is it possible that somebody's seen that watch of Bunter's and fancied it was gold?
Oh, really, Cherry? I know jolly well that it's 62 carat.
Rot, said Johnny Bull. A blind mole with its eyes shut could see that it wasn't. It's not worth anything at all.
I tell you, they're after it. Bessie heard them say they got to get after Bunter. Well, that's me. And get that watch off him. And now I know it's so jolly valuable, I'm jolly well going to take it down to old Lazarus in Courtfield tomorrow and sell it. See? I may get £50 for it. Or 100. Ha, 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 ha. I mean to say, why should 3 pickpockets get after my watch unless they knew it was awfully valuable?
Blessed if I can make it out, said Harry Wharton, wrinkling his brows. Yes, it really does look as if somebody's after Bunter's watch specially. Squiff stopped a man grabbing it last Saturday. Then that blighter barged into the school this morning and snatched my watch. He must have supposed it was Bunter's, as he was wearing it, and then this afternoon, Toddy's watch. He must have supposed that that was Bunter's too, as he had it on. But what the jolly old thump could anybody want Bunter's watch for? Asked the bounder.
Oh, really, Smithy? My 72-carat gold watch?
Beats me hollow, said Tom Redwing. We all supposed that man Slim Judson was hanging about after old Popper's precious Blue Mauritius stamp. Now it looks as if he wants Bunter's watch. But why?
Well, I fancy it's like this, said Bunter. He was after old Popper's stamp at first, but that's lost. He's chucked it up, and now he wants to get hold of my watch instead, and go home loaded with loot after all, remarked the bounder sarcastically. Ha 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 ha! They all laughed. Well, if the watch ain't jolly valuable, what do you think they're after it for? Hooted Bunter.
But it isn't, said Nugent.
It jolly well is. Why, old Grimey's after that man Slim, and it's jolly dangerous for him to hang on in this neighbourhood with the bobbies after him, and he's doing it just to get after my gold watch.
It's all rot, said Peter Todd. I can't make it out, but we jolly well know that man Judson is after old Popper's stamp.
He's after my watch. Bessie heard him say so. It's quite plain. He was jolly well after it the other night when I saw him on the landing. Yeah, I see that now, declared Bunter. A fellow takes his watch up to bed, and he was going to root through the dogs till he found me and my watch.
Bob Cherry whistled. By gum, it does look like it, he said.
It does, it do, said Squiff. He couldn't have been after old Popper's Blue Mauritius up in the dormitories if he hid it in a study.
Hardly, agreed Harry Wharton. Grimey thinks so, said Peter Todd. That's why he was asking us questions yesterday in Quelch's study. He thinks the man hid it in something that might have been taken up to a dormitory afterwards, such as a blazer or anything.
Well, that's possible, said Harry.
He was after my watch, yelled Bunter.
Rot, said Johnny Ball. All the fellows in number 1 study shook their heads. Judging by the look of the thing, Slim Judson had forgotten all about Sir Hilton Popper's precious Blue Mauritius and was concentrated on Bunter's watch, and had called in the aid of 2 rascals of his own kidney to help him in obtaining possession thereof. The fat owl blinked at them in angry indignation.
I say, you fellows, you'll jolly well see tomorrow when I take that watch to old Lazarus in Corkfield, he yapped. It's as plain as anything that it's awfully valuable, with those 3 pickpockets after it. That man Slim jolly well knows what it's worth.
You fat ass, he's never even seen it, said Bob.
He jolly well has. I'll bet he saw it on the table in my study the day he was here.
Well, if he saw it, he knows it's worth about 3pence.
2pence, said Johnny Ball.
Oh, suffering cats and crocodiles, exclaimed Peter Todd. He jumped up from the table, his face ablaze with excitement. Bunter, you fat foozler!
Oh, really, Toddy?
You frumptuous chump!
Look here!
Mean to say that watch was on the study table when that man Judson was in the study last Wednesday? Shrieked Peter.
Yes, it jolly well was. You see, I'd shown it to Fishy, and he wouldn't buy it, and he chucked it on the table. And then that man came racing up the passage, and I cut off to the box room and forgot it.
Oh, holy smoke, gasped Peter. Then it was in the study with him.
Eh? Well, yes.
And you put it on afterwards? Yelled Peter.
Well, yes, when I got back to the study before I saw him there. So he jolly well saw it, and of course he knew at once how valuable it was, and that's why he's been after it ever since.
Where is it now? Shrieked Peter.
Eh? Well, I left it in the table drawer in my study when I went out.
Peter did not wait for more. He rushed to the door and darted out into the passage. Billy Bunter blinked after him in astonishment.
I say, you fellows, where are you all going?
He yelled. His eyes popped behind his spectacles as the whole crowd of juniors in number 7 study rushed after Peter Todd. Bunter was left alone in the study.
You fellows!
He yelled. But answer came there none. Why Harry Wharton and co. had all rushed out of the study in that extraordinary way, Billy Bunter had no idea. But as it happened, nothing could have suited Bunter better. He was left alone with the spread on the study table. He dropped into one of the vacant chairs, and the next moment the most capacious jaws at Greyfriars School were working to capacity. Harry Wharton and co. fairly hurtled into number 7 study. Peter Todd was first man in, but the famous 5 were at his heels, and Smithy and Redwing and Squiff close behind. Every face was wildly excited. Billy Bunter had come up to number 1 study with the intention of startling the inhabitants thereof, but he had startled them more than he could have dreamed. for the same idea had leapt into all minds. The Blue Mauritius had been hidden in number 7 study. Inspector Grimes surmised that it must have been put into some article later removed from the study, such as a blazer or a cap, anything that might have been left about a study and taken away afterwards. And now the fat and fatuous owl of the remove had revealed quite casually, and with no idea whatever that it was a matter of any importance, that his big gold watch had been in the study at the time, lying on the table while Slim Judson was there, and that he had put it on again. Mr. Grimes had not thought of so unlikely an article as a watch, but the watch had been there. Judson must have seen it, must have known that the room would be searched for the Blue Mauritius, that it would be safe only in an article likely to be taken from the study. Nothing could have suited him better than a watch, which, as it happened, had been left on the table, but which obviously the owner must intend to put in his watch pocket again. Was that why the pickpockets were so inexplicably, so desperately, in quest of a watch which, on its intrinsic merits, was worth precisely nix? It had not, of course, occurred to Bunter, but it occurred to all the other fellows in number 1 study, and they poured helter-skelter into number 7. Peter, first in the field, grabbed the table drawer and pulled it open so energetically that it came out, scattering its contents over the study carpet. Papers, a gum bottle, an India rubber, several pens and pencils, and other such articles rained on the floor, and among them a heavy object thudded down, Billy Bunter's big gold watch. Hello, 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 there it is. That's Bunter's ticker. Peter whipped it up. 8 eager fellows gathered round him. Did that glimmering old brassy turnip of Bunter's contain a rare stamp worth £2,000? Certainly there was room for it inside, lots of room. Skinner indeed had said that Bunter's watch was big enough to take in a lodger. But was it there? Quick, Toddy, get it open. Let's look. We are on the esteemed tenterhooks, Toddy. Peter Todd snapped open the case. The works, such as they were, of Bunter's big watch were revealed, but not wholly. A fragment of paper was there. It glimmered blue. "Great Pip!" gasped Peter. "Oh, gad," said the bounder. "The stamp! The jolly old Blue Mauritius! Eureka!" They had more than half expected it, but it was a thrill to see it. It was a postage stamp, once upon a time worth the humble sum of 2pence, worth at the present moment at least £2,000 and probably more. The famous 5 had had a glimpse of that stamp before, in Sir Hilton Popper's hand in Popper Court Woods. The other fellows saw it for the first time. They gazed at it. That celebrated stamp, of which only a dozen are known to be in existence, showed a left profile of Queen Victoria, the word Post Office on the left-hand side, Mauritius on the right, postage across the top, and 2 pence along the bottom of the stamp, with a rather crude ornament in each corner. It was printed in a deep blue. It was one of the dreams of a stamp collector's life. And there it was, sticking in Billy Bunter's gold watch, where the cornered pickpocket had hidden it a week ago. "So, that's it," said Bob Cherry. "Come on," said Peter. "Quelch will be jolly glad. I fancy he's fed up to the back teeth with Popper and his stamp." 9 fellows crowded out of number 7 study and marched down the passage. Peter in the lead, carrying Bunter's gold watch, the other fellows in procession behind him. Harry Wharton tapped at his form master's door.
"Come in."
There was a snap in the voice within. However, Wharton opened the door, and Peter marched in with the watch, and the rest followed him in. Then they became aware that Mr. Quelch was not alone in the study. Inspector Grimes of Courtfield was with him. The inspector glanced at the crowd of juniors and raised his eyebrows slightly. Mr. Quelch fixed his gimlet eyes upon them with a grim and portentous frown. Quelch was not, in fact, in a good temper. Mr. Grimes was there again. Now, added to the troublesome affair of the missing stamp, was the puzzling and irritating affair of the pickpockets, who seemed to be making the fattest member of his form the object of their very special attention.
What does this mean? He rapped. Wharton?
If you please, sir.
I am engaged at the moment. Go away at once.
But, sir...
Take 100 lines, Wharton.
Oh, yes, sir. But, you see, sir... gasped Peter.
Take 100 lines, Todd.
But, sir... exclaimed Quiff.
Take 100 lines, Field.
Esteemed Cyber...
Take 100 lines, Hurry Singh.
Mr. Quelch rose to his feet. He pointed to the door.
Go! All of you, at once. The next boy who speaks will be caned. Leave my study instantly.
9 fellows became dumb on the spot. Quelch's hand was already reaching for the cane on his table. Really, it looked as if the heroes of the remove, having marched Sir Hilton Popper's precious stamp into their formmaster's study, would have to march it out again. But Peter, without speaking, laid the Blue Mauritius on the table, almost under Mr. Quelch's nose. The remove master stared at it. He was no philatelist. Having stared at that scrap of paper, he gave Peter a grim look.
What's this? What do you mean by bringing a used postage stamp to me? Are you in your senses, Todd?
Inspector Grimes jumped. He fairly bounded. Portly as he was, with plenty of weight to lift, Mr. Grimes was on his feet in a fraction of a split second, bending over Quelch's table and staring at the stamp. "The boys have found it!" he gasped.
What?
"This is Sir Hilton Popper's lost stamp, sir," said Mr. Grimes. "The Blue Mauritius, worth £2,000. And these boys appear to have found it."
"Oh!"
gasped Mr. Quelch. The thunder cleared from his brow.
"Bless my soul,"
said Mr. Quelch quite genially.
That is Sir Hilton's stamp?"
"Yes, sir."
"Oh, well, I'm very glad that the stamp is found. Please tell Inspector Grimes and me, boys, where you found it."
Which the juniors were only too pleased to do. Inspector Grimes' eyes opened wide, and Mr. Quelch's wider, as the tale of the discovery of the stamp was told.
"In Bunter's watch?"
said Mr. Quelch, with a deep breath.
"Upon my word, that stupid boy."
"That utterly stupid boy," said Mr. Grimes.
"However, all is well that ends well,"
said Mr. Quelch, with a smile.
"I'm much obliged to you, my boys. Inspector Grimes is much obliged to you, and I'm sure that Sir Hilton Popper will feel much obliged to you. You may leave my study."
And Harry Wharton and Co. left the study, taking Bunter's watch with them, and leaving the precious Blue Mauritius in the official hands of Mr. Grimes. In a cheery crowd they tramped up the stairs to carry on with the spread in number 1 study, and tell Bunter the thrilling news, and, in view of the great occasion, to welcome the fat owl to a whack in the spread. But they need not have bothered to think of Bunter in connection with the spread. Bunter had done all the thinking that was necessary in that matter. Hello. Bunter, we found it in your preposterous watch, and we... Here, what? Where's Bunter? Exclaimed Harry Wharton.
"And where's the spread?"
roared Johnny Bull. Bunter was gone. The spread was gone. It was easy to guess where the spread was. It was inside Bunter. It was no use looking for the spread, and it was not much use looking for Bunter.
"I say, fair play is a jewel," said Billy Bunter.
Eh? What?
"I say, fair play is a jewel, ain't it?" demanded Bunter.
He blinked at Harry Wharton and Co. in the Greyfriars Quad. The famous 5 had come out of the house and were glancing in passing at a car on the drive. They knew the car from Popper Court. The lord of that domain, apparently, was at the school. Billy Bunter was blinking at the car through his big spectacles. "What do you mean, you fat ass?" inquired Johnny Bull.
"I mean what I say. Fair play's a jewel," said Bunter. "Old Popper's with Quelch now. He's come about that stamp being found, of course."
"Oh, what about that?" asked Bob. It seemed probable that Sir Hilton, now in possession once more of his Blue Mauritius, and in the happy state of being able at long last to meet the demands of his Inspector of Taxes, had called at Greyfriars to acknowledge, with a few gracious words to Mr. Quelch, the service rendered by boys of his form. But why Bunter was interested was rather a puzzle. "Well," said the fat owl, "he's got his stamp back, hasn't he? It wasn't my watch those pickpockets were after, as it turns out, but that stamp." "Ha, ha, ha, ha!" They all laughed. "And he's jolly well bound to stump up something for getting his stamp back," said Bunter. "That's fair, ain't it?" "Rot," said Johnny Bull. "Oh, really, Bull?" "Bosh," said Nugent. "Oh, really, Nugent?" "Piffle," said Bob. "Oh, really, Cherry?" "You fat chump," said Harry Wharton. "Do you think we're going to stick the old bean for spotting his stamp?" "Eh? I wasn't speaking of you." "Well, if you mean Toddy." "I don't mean Toddy. I mean me," yapped Bunter. "You!" exclaimed all the famous five together. "Me," said Bunter. "Wasn't it in my watch? Wasn't it to me that those cranksters and gooks, I mean gangsters and crooks, got after? If I'd lost that watch, where would old Popper's stamp be? Look what I've been through, all on account of his blessed stamp. Now it's been found in my watch, and my opinion is that old Popper ought to stump up something, and I'm jolly well going to speak to him when he comes out to his car. You howling ass, you preposterous fathead." "Well, that's what I think," said Billy Bunter. "You fellows had nothing to do with it, except that you spotted the stamp. It was in my watch. And when old Popper comes out—" "Shut up, you ass," breathed Bob Cherry, as a tall and angular figure appeared in the doorway, and an eyeglass glimmered. "Shan't," retorted Bunter. "I tell you I'm going to speak to old Popper. He's coming, you burbling ass, and he can hear you." "Oh!" gasped Bunter. He spun round. Judging by the knitted grey brows over the eyeglass, Sir Hilton had heard Bunter. Harry Wharton and Co. faded out of the picture. But Billy Bunter had no idea of fading out. If there was a chance, even a remote one, of bagging a reward, William George was not the man to let his chances, like the sunbeams, pass him by. He rolled up to the tall baronet, heedless of the grim frown over the glinting eyeglass. "If you please, sir, I'm jolly glad that stamp was found, sir," bleated Bunter. "Don't you know, sir, that it was found in my watch, sir?" "I am aware of it, Bunter," snorted Sir Hilton Popper. "I have been informed of the circumstance, of all the crass stupidity, yea, of all the insensate obtuseness." "What?" "For a whole week, Gunter, that stamp was missing, causing me great suspense and anxiety. And it was in your watch and about your person all the time," thundered Sir Hilton. "If you'd had as much intelligence as the average rabbit—" "Really, sir, if you'd been anything but an utter blockhead, Grunter, the stamp would have been found long ago. But I say, I have a great mind to smack your foolish head, Punter. In fact," added Sir Hilton, apparently thinking it a good idea, "I will do so. Smack! Yoo-hoo!" Sir Hilton Popper strode away to his car. From five fellows looking on from a little distance came a howl of merriment. Sir Hilton Popper, frowning, departed in his car. Billy Bunter, neither pleased nor gratified by the reward he had received, was left rubbing a fat head, and the famous five yelling with laughter. Only the fat owl was not amused by the final episode in the strange, eventful history of the mystery of Bunter's study and the Blue Mauritius. Beast!
That was Martin Jarvis reading Billy Bunter and the Blue Mauritius. You may like to know that Martin Jarvis has also read two other Billy Bunter titles, Billy Bunter of Greyfriars School and Billy Bunter's Postal Order. If you would like to buy either of these and can't find them in the shops, you can order direct from CSA Telltapes, and you can find their address and telephone number on your inlay card. Alternatively, you can buy from CSA's website, which is www.csatelltapes.co.uk. demon.co.uk. Thank you for listening to CSA Telltapes.